Is coming, right? All right, there we go. All right, good evening, everyone. We will get started. It is 5 p.m. I'm Mayor Devin T. Murphy, and this is the Pinole City Council meeting for June 6, 2023. And I now call the regular City Council meeting of June 6, 2023 to order. The first item on the agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And moving down to item number 2 of the agenda is our land acknowledgement, which I'll read aloud. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Ohlone people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Ohlone land, the land that Pinole sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Next on the agenda is item number 3, which is our roll call and city clerk's report. Madam City Clerk, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms. Here. Councilmember Tave.
Here.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Here.
Councilmember Sasai.
Here.
City Manager Murray.
Here.
City Attorney Kasher.
Here.
Deputy City Clerk Stone.
Here.
Mayor and Council, the agenda was posted on Thursday, June 1st at 4:30 with all legally required notices. No written comments were received in advance of the meeting. There was a correction memo for item 9J that was distributed to staff and council, posted online and printed and made available at the back of the dais. And then this evening, we have 2 requests from council members to attend the meeting remotely. In accordance with the Brown Act and AB 2449, we will now have each council member briefly describe their reason for being absent this evening and identify any other people in the room with them who are over 18. Following that, the council will then vote to approve the remote attendance.
Thank you. We'll start with Councilmember Sasai.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you all virtually. I am recovering from a respiratory illness I've had since the weekend, so I hope to be up and running by the end of this week. And there's nobody in this room that is under or over 18 years of age.
Thank you. And Councilor Martinez Rubin.
Good evening, everyone. I am providing caretaking to a family member, and there is no one in the room with me.
Great. Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Do we need to take any other action?
Just a vote to approve the remote attendance. So we'll need a motion and second and vote.
I'll move that we approve the remote attendance for council members Martinez Rubin and Sasai.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. Thank you. City Clerk Bell, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Yes.
Councilmember Tave.
Yes.
Councilmember Sasai.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. And then finally, does the council have any conflicts to report on agenda items this evening?
Yes, so I, through the advice of the attorney, would be abstaining from the conversation from item 12A.
That's correct.
Okay.
Item 12A.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I've noted that, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. The next item on our agenda is item number 4. There are no closed, which is convened to a closed session. There is no closed session this evening because we don't have any closed session items, which brings us to item number 6, citizens to be heard. And this is the first portion of our citizens to be heard section. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments this evening?
Thank you. Yes, Rafael Menes.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, members of the public. My name is Rafael Menes. I'm a resident of Pinole. And tonight I just have 2 items to discuss. First, I'd like to express my disappointment with I'm not sure whether it's the county's health department or the statewide mandate, but the website that I was using to provide updates on the coronavirus status in Pinole to the community is no longer available. It says for data, we should go to the state website, and the state website simply has weekly updates covering the entire state so far as I can determine. There's more detailed data sets, but they last appear to have been updated on May 30th. So that's less data than we had previously. I recognize it's probably due to the cessation of the emergency and reduced funding, but I still think that it's disappointing and that the loss of transparency is unfortunate and a harm to the community. Secondly, I'd like to remind everybody that we're going to be having our Pride Day celebration this Sunday at noon, I believe, at Fernandez Park. So hopefully everybody can show up and celebrate the various ways we're going to be expressing pride, whether it be LGBT pride, pride in the city of Pinole, or pride in Juneteenth. We have pride for everyone. Hope to see you there. That's all for today. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. We'll close out the first citizens to be heard section. And we'll go through our reports to item number 7, which is reports and communications. I will start with my mayor's report. So I wanted to also talk to folks about Pinole Pride. I'm really glad that we're having this inaugural event. It will be this Sunday, June 11th, from 12 to 3 p.m. Recently, I had the opportunity to speak with Concord News about about the excitement of our event and what our community is looking forward to celebrating on Sunday. So that is available on our on my social media channels, as well as on our City of Pinole channels as well. And so again, just wanted to encourage and invite the public to come out this Sunday from 12 to 3. A lots to celebrate in Pinole, including our 120th anniversary, as the member of the public also mentioned, Juneteenth and LGBT Pride Month is this month. And so it's going to be a great celebration and looking forward to seeing the community out. I also wanted to give a report back about an upcoming wildfire prevention town hall. The city of Pinole is partnering with Contra Costa Fire Protection District for a wildfire prevention town hall on Saturday, June 17th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. right here in the Pinole Chambers. We do invite the Pinole community to come out, but it's also available to others who are interested in coming as well. So if you are someone who'd like to learn more, understand some of the programs the district has, or are just interested in meeting other folks who also have some shared interest in wildfire prevention, please come out that Saturday. It would be a wonderful event for us to learn and share some resources as well. So I wanted to give that report, and I'll take a moment, but I'll ask Pinole Television to cue the mayor's report for this month. So we'll go back to 7A and go next to 7B. There are no mayor and council appointments, so we'll go to city council member and committee reports and communications, item 7C. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Good evening. Thank you. I have a number of items to report on. The first one is that along with a number of League of California Cities or Cal Cities electeds, we met with Assembly Member Buffy Wicks and discussed with her some of the proposed legislation, and the results of some of, past legislation and how they have impacted, our cities. There was a lot of discussion on housing elements. Like we're all aware of, not only what Pinole was, going through, and we still are not certified, but what a number of the other cities in her district, have been going through, to try to get, those housing elements approved. We had a, wastewater subcommittee meeting and, took a look at the budget. Chemical costs are going up quite a bit. And so that was a, big expenditure in that area. And I had an opportunity to attend the Family Justice Center fundraiser event about a week and a half ago. And I just I was really impressed on this, this asset that we have in the community, both West County, Central County, and East County, for families that are going through crisis. And, I would like to see if we can link those resources on our website, because they're just incredible resources that we have in the community. I also attended the Industrial Association lunch, where we had an update from 4 cities on what they're doing, both in their economic growth and their growth in housing. So that was good. And then last week we had the subcommittee working on the East Bay Hills wildfire prevention program, reviewing the MOU, and the MOU had gone through all of the attorneys for the various jurisdictions that would be party to this. The next step is to bring the draft MOU to the full committee, and then it would come to the cities to either sign on or not, further discuss. So that would be, I'd say, in about the next 2 months, we should be seeing something. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Chams. We'll go to Councilmember Tate.
Thank you. So I had the pleasure to be on the WICTAC committee for May 26th, where we did have a discussion briefly about well, actually it was pretty in-depth about bicycling and Richmond Parkway and bicycle safety, pedestrian safety. There's a pretty large project that's it's Richmond Parkway Transportation Plan. They gave an update there that was pretty interesting as to how we're using our trails and basic pedestrian paths of travel, sidewalks, no sidewalks, those large trucks that are going down Richmond Parkway, which I know a lot of people in Pinole and surrounding cities are mostly cycling. So the trails came up as one of the big topics, and how to further improve those trails. It's funded by Caltrans Sustainability or Sustainable Communities Grant for the city of Richmond, which should help the region, with some of their pathways. As you guys know, we had the trail that was done along the waterfront over by the wastewater plant, connecting 2 trails together via a bridge. So the hopes is that these trails will start to, kind of link together where they make sense. But, things that came up in our community came up in this conversation about striping, visibility. Those are those huge issues that we talked a little bit about in our road safety. So it was kind of just interesting to know that we have regional conversations going on about that. Second thing was the waste water committee, no Hercules wastewater plant. Couple topics that came up were more along the lines of capital projects and legacy projects that were coming from the last that for whatever reason got potentially value engineered out of the larger project, and how to incorporate those into a long-term capital plan. There was some concerns about I&I, and as we start to, we have families that are living together, and more people are starting to gravitate to the ADU concept, even though it may not be permitted. that concept has been around in Pinole for quite some time, especially with rental units. There's a tendency to try to, you know, two families cohabitating in a house, whether like most of the times it's family related relatives. But what that does to our wastewater system, how do those flows get counted? How does it work into our plant? And then there was a conversation about wet weather and dry weather counts, which I think Mayor Pro Tem Tom's asked to extend that report because for a while we haven't met. So a lot of those items weren't included. So we're looking forward to getting those reports back. And then I think the mayor's conference, Mayor Pro Tem Tom's is now on the ABAG committee for the mayor's conference. So I just wanted to make that announcement. I think it's a great thing for Pinole. That's why I didn't want to let it go unnoticed. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Tave. We'll go to Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. Since we last met, I also joined some of the electeds from Hercules, City of Alameda, City of Albany, City of El Cerrito, myself, and you were there as well, in speaking to Assemblymember Wicks, just to get a sense of what support she could provide us, all cities in the East Bay, given the current situation or status of legislation and that entire process. So in addition to housing issues, we also collectively made requests for ongoing funding, so continuous funding to address the matter of homelessness or having as many individuals, and increasingly that number going beyond urban settings and into suburban settings like ours here in Pinole. So wanted to point that out because there are some people within the city of Pinole that have expressed concern about what we can do about individuals who need as much help as they do, given the myriad reasons for why they may end up not having shelter or homes. So additionally, Councilmember Sasai and I and Assistant to City Manager Murray, Fiona Epps, met twice to continue discussing what we would like to do with regard to having input for the design or redesign of our city seal. And thank you to Ms. Epps and other staff who may have worked with her to now have a page on the city's website dedicated to the city seal's history, as well as a link to the survey that was launched I think about mid-May now. And we will continue to have that link open or available for input, and I'll have other kinds of discussion points brought up with Councilmember Sasai, because I don't want to take the whole time for what we so in a very fun and very interesting way we have been able to do. So it's been a good meeting as a trio. Additionally, some of us attended the all-day conference specifically on the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a great source of funding, but very complex as well. A summary from my perspective is that yes, there are federal funds. However, even the federal government is still putting in place its systems to have those federal funds become available to the states and then eventually to cities for a number of different projects that would be funded for different kinds of infrastructure. So that is my report, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez Rubin. We'll go to Councilor Sasai.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, sorry to interrupt, but we do have an interruption to our cable broadcast. So I was requesting hopefully to take a short recess so we can assess whether or not, I believe the meeting is still being streamed online via Zoom, but not through TV.
Okay, great. How long do you think we should have?
We estimate, well, we could take a short recess and then we could probably have a better estimate once we speak to PCTV.
Okay, 5 minutes is fine. Okay, great. We'll take a 5-minute recess. Need to turn on, oh, there we are. All right, good evening, everyone. We are back. Or at least coming back. I hope our council members online can also hear us. Great.
Mayor, we need the third.
Oh, great. All right, sounds great. We are now back from our recess, and we're back online and on Zoom. We were at item number 7C, which is City Council Committee Reports and Communications. I believe we concluded with Councilor Martinez Rubin's report. Councilor Martinez Rubin, were you complete?
No, I completed it unless it wasn't captured, given the streaming. So let me know if you'd like me to repeat.
I think it was captured. So I think yep, it was. I'm getting note that it was captured. So we'll go to Councilmember
thank you.
Sasai.
Great, thank you, Mayor Murphy. Councilor Martinez Rubin reported out for our ad hoc city seal committee, so I'm not going to double up on that, but I will reiterate that our survey is still active, and we made a decision as a committee to leave it open. So I encourage our fellow members on the council to share it widely to our constituents. The webpage that includes the background information on our city seal can be found at ci.pinole.ca.us/residents/Pinole_history/city_seal. Also last week, I was very happy to host a city hall tour for a student council from Ellenhurst Elementary School, which is the very first time for a staff in many, many years. And really the first time ever for myself, as you know, as was the same case for a lot of staff members. So it was a really great time. I gave a walk through City Hall to our student council, giving them sort of an overview of each department. Oh, we have pictures. That's amazing. So that's our student council from Ellenhurst Elementary School. Their grades 4th through 6th. They had so many questions and had a great time. Like I said, we stopped by each department and there's Director Misha right there. Everybody was so amazing at giving an overview of what they do on a daily basis. So I really wanted to give a big thank you to Director Wayland, Keith, our building inspector, Dave from our planning department, Sarah from code enforcement, Director Mishra, City Attorney Casher, who got the record, I think, for most questions from our kids, which is surprising. City Manager Murray and Fiona Epps, Stacy, Charlene, and Josie from HR, Director Guillory, Officer Witchy and Natasha from Pinole PD, all who did an amazing job of breaking down their role in our city, so that 4th, 5th, and 6th graders can understand and digest it all. And a very special shout out to our city clerk, Heather Bell, and our amazing team, Roxanne and Olivia, who work so diligently to organize this day, which I think is so important for our youth. You know, these students are going to remember this day where they pictured themselves, hopefully somewhere participating and contributing to local government. And this is one of the many ways that we can activate our youth here in Pinole, get them excited about civic engagement and hopefully retain their talents. So thank you again for all that participated. And I hope that this is the first of many city hall tours that we give here in Pinole. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Member Sasai, and great pictures. Thank you for sharing those with us. All right, next we'll go to item number 7D, which is our council request for future agenda items. I'll start with, was there a question? Okay, so I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Chong.
I have none.
Councilmember Tate,
None.
Councilor Martinez Rubin.
Yes. I'd like to have staff prepare an information memo to us. It's going to take a little bit of research to help us understand how, if there is a process at all, to name city structures or facilities, give them a name, a residence name. There are some legacy residents in Pinole that have participated in the city in their own ways, and to acknowledge them somehow beyond an award or a certificate of recognition is something that would be quite meaningful to them. And our streets and some of our cities, well, primarily our streets are named after some of the pioneering families. So don't know how that came to be, of course, because that was way back probably in the 50s. But the question has come up again. So it doesn't have to be a discussion here at council, but given that staff would have to spend some time preparing that, and I can foresee that in the future there might be some interest in having some of the structures. I'll just exaggerate an example. Let's say I wanted to have the playground equipment named after someone who felt that they had contributed largely to the design and or development of that part of town. You know, how would we go about determining whether their name merited that kind of recognition?
Sure. I think Mayor Pro Tem Thomas wants to respond with a.
Yeah, we do have a policy. It's a naming policy. And Councilmember Tave and I are on the subcommittee for that. So there is a process already in place. And we can ask the city manager to share that.
That would be great. And that, yeah, so I'll take a look at that and see if that includes the kinds of facility that I'm thinking about.
Thank you. Any other items on the agenda for future agendas? Councilor Martinez Sherman?
Thank you. No.
All right. Councilor Sasai.
None for me. Thank you.
All right. I don't have any tonight either. So we'll continue on with our reports and communications. Next is 7E City Manager's Report and Department Staff. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. We've already heard mention of a number of upcoming city coordinated community events, so we hope to see everybody out at those. We're going to have our Pinole Pride, inaugural Pinole Pride celebration this coming weekend. Next weekend, as Mayor Murphy mentioned, we'll be providing the facility and hosting Contra Costa County Fire Protection District open house on wildfire preparedness and safety. We'll also that morning be having a flag raising ceremony in recognition of Philippine Independence Day. And of course, coming up soon, we'll have the annual Pinole Car Show. So all sorts of great city coordinators supported events that we're looking forward to seeing folks out at. Want to provide a preview of what we have tentatively scheduled for our next council meeting, which is going to be on Tuesday, June 20th. We'll be recognizing Independence Day. We're expecting to request council's approval of contracts for our broadband feasibility study and recycled water study. We have a return item that the city council requested, a resolution authorizing that the city provide a stipend to city council volunteer interns. We're expecting to get council's feedback on a drone policy for non-police use of drones by other city departments. We'll be getting council's direction on further developing a legislative review and action framework for the city. And we'll be providing information on the various active city commissions and some of our past and now dormant commissions, including their role, form, authority, and getting council's direction on how to perhaps update some of those or reinstitute some of those. Those are the items that we're having come forward. We'll also have the final proposed versions of the CIP and budget. And as has been our practice at council's request recently, we're a meeting behind, but at the second council meeting of each month, we've been providing an update on some of our street maintenance work. And so in the month leading up to our last council meeting, which was May 16th, we used 4 tons of cold mix asphalt to do pothole repairs throughout the city. We did asphalt patching with 5 tons of asphalt. That's 7 significant patches. We didn't do crack sealing or painting though, but we're gearing up to do some of those in the summer months. That's my report for today. Thanks.
Thank you, City Manager Murray. We'll go to next to 7F, which is our city attorney's report. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Murphy. Nothing to report this evening.
All right, thank you so much. And I will ask Pinole Television to cue the monthly mayor update, and we'll go back to 7A, and then we will conclude. We'll ask for public comments for reports and communications.
Hi, Pinolean. I'm Devin T. Murphy, mayor of this vibrant city, Pinole. We're kicking off this season for celebration and service in Pinole. Last month, the Community Services Commission hosted Community Service Day, where volunteers helped with several projects in and around Fernandez Park. The city of Pinole also honored our employees during Public Service Employee Appreciation Week and National Police Week. Next time you see one of our police officers or another city employee around town, let them know you appreciate them. The Pinole Police Department continues to build strong partnerships in this community. Last month, our officers organized Project Hope to provide food vouchers, haircuts, clothing, hot showers, and more to our unhoused community. It was a great success for all. You may have noticed a lot of construction around town. Satellite Affordable Housing Associates, also known as SAHA, was recently issued a building permit to begin construction of 33 affordable housing units that will be located at 811 San Pablo Avenue. Construction will commence as early as June of this year. If you or someone you know is interested in applying for one of the units, they can subscribe to SAHA's notification list. SAHA will then notify subscribers when the waitlist opens in spring of 2024. Also on San Pablo Avenue, Vista Woods development is moving along with an anticipated summer 2024 completion. And in Pinole Valley, our Public Works team and Contra Costa Fire Protection District have established a newly paved emergency evacuation route on Galbraith Road. Pinole and El Sobrante residents will benefit from this new safety measure. If an emergency occurs, such as a wildfire, the new gate on Galbraith Road will be unlocked and opened by emergency personnel, allowing residents to drive through to safety on the other side. The last of the construction updates this month, the Pinole Shores 2 project was approved by the Planning Commission on May 8th. And I'll update you in next month's video more on this project. Recently, the Pinole City Council received an update on the condition of the city's roads and the city's pavement management program. 52 miles of Pinole roads were evaluated. The report provided information about pavement condition index scores, also known as PCI scores, for the different roads in our town. As you've probably experienced, some are in better shape than others, and it would require a lot of funding to fix all roads. We will be seeking crucial feedback from residents like you over the next few months to find out what is the desired state of our roads and how much we're willing to spend to fix it. This month, we are celebrating all things Pride, including LGBTQ Pride, Juneteenth, the 120th anniversary of Pinole Incorporation, and the 200th anniversary of the Pinole Land Grant. Join us on June 11th at Fernandez Park to celebrate. Did you know that in 1823, Mexican soldier Ignacio Martinez was awarded an 18,000-acre land grant that now encompasses Pinole Valley Park and much of Pinole? Happy birthday to our dynamic little city. I'd say Pinole has come a long way thanks to the wonderful people who live, work, and play here. If you'd like to learn more about the history of Pinole, the Historical Society is a great resource. You can even visit City Hall, the Pinole Library, or Mechanics Bank to view exhibits that offer a glimpse into Pinole's rich history. Speaking of history, the city seal may be getting a new look. The original design of the current seal originated in 1965, and the last time it was updated was in the 90s. We will be working to develop new designs with the help of the community and will be proposing a new seal and logo design early next year. Read more about the design process and timeline and find out how you can submit your ideas on our website. Later this month, I hope to see you at the car show and pancake breakfast on June 25th. And of course, this year, we're bringing back the 4th of July fireworks show right here at Bayfront Park. As your mayor, I plan on keeping you updated on the Beat of Pinole each month. You can follow our progress on social media and the city's website. Thank you for watching.
Thank you so much, Pinole Television. And again, thank you to our staff for putting those together as part of our, love the jazz team too. As part of our communications and public outreach plan, we'll continue to put out more information, including mayor monthly updates for our community. And we invite the community to share those with your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues, and anyone who wants to know more about what's happening in Pinole. So that being said, I'll ask the city clerk if there's any public comments on item 7.
We do have one online, Cordell Hindler.
Can you hear me, Roxanne?
Yes, go ahead.
So good evening, Mayor Murphy, Council. My name is Cordell Henley, and I have some items to bring forward to put on next month's agenda. So number 1 is to invite Danny Wan or a representative to come and talk to you all about the Port of Oakland's plans as it's slowly coming out of the pandemic, because this is very important. Number 2, also to invite Sabrina Landreth to provide an update regarding the program that the East Bay Regional Park District is going to be planning in the upcoming months. And thirdly is to direct staff to look at cities like in West County on how they conduct their council meetings, like the city of El Cerrito and San Pablo and Richmond, because I've looked at our procedures for Richmond, and it shows that that each council member is allowed 5 minutes to talk. So hopefully that council will direct staff to do some comparison to other cities in West County on how they conduct their meetings. So that's just a little a little sample. Hopefully they will be put on the next agenda. So that's it.
That concludes public comments.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, we'll go to item number 8, which is our recognitions, presentations, and community events. We do have 3 proclamations that our council will read aloud, and then we have 1 presentation this evening from the Pinole Valley High School debate team. First and foremost, we'll go through our proclamations, and we'll start with Juneteenth. Juneteenth is on June 19th, 2023, whereas America does not only celebrate our independence on July 4th, Juneteenth, officially Juneteenth National Independence Day, and also known as Jubilee Day, Emancipation Day, Freedom Day, and Black Independence Day, is a federal holiday in the United States commemorating the emancipation of enslaved African Americans. And
Whereas events in the history of the United States that led to the start of the Civil War in 1861 centered on sectional differences between the North and the South that were based on the economic and social divergence caused by the existence of slavery. And whereas the day was recognized as a federal holiday on June 17th, 2021, when President Joe Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law, making it the first new federal holiday since Martin Luther King Jr. Day was adopted in 1983. And
Whereas Juneteenth, or June 19, 1865, is considered the date when the last slaves in America were freed, when General Gordon Granger rode into Galveston, Texas, and announced the end of the Civil War and the insidious institution of slavery. Thousands of enslaved people in Texas, among the last to learn of their independence, tasted hard-won freedom for the first time, almost 2.5 years after President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. And
whereas today, Juneteenth commemorates African American freedom and emphasizes education and achievement, as it is a time for reflection and rejoicing, and a time for assessment, self-improvement, and planning for the future. And whereas Juneteenth symbolizes freedom, celebrates the abolishment of slavery, and reminds all Americans of the significant contributions of African Americans to our society. And
Whereas General Granger's announcement called for absolute equality, we know that such a vision was far from complete back then as it is today. We celebrate how far we have come and take stock of how far we must go. And whereas 2023 marks 158 years of freedom celebrations, Juneteenth commemorates African American freedom and emphasizes education and achievement. It is a day marked with celebrations and family gatherings, and is a time for assessment, self-improvement, and for planning for the future.
now therefore I, Devin T. Murphy, Mayor of the City of Pinole, County of Contra Costa, State of California, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2023 as Juneteenth Day in the City of Pinole, and encourage all residents to celebrate, honor, and reflect on the significant role of African Americans have played in the history of the United States, and of course, our City of Pinole. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. And I'll ask, do we have any public comments on this item?
we do. Rafael Menace.
Good evening again. My name is Rafael Menace. I'm a resident of Pinole. And this comment is, I noted it down as being both for 8A and B, because I'd like to talk a bit both about Juneteenth and also about LGBTQ pride. Because a lot of the time, people try to put the concepts behind those two things in opposition. They say, oh, pride is just some sort of white thing. It doesn't really apply to other communities. Or, oh, minority communities are against the LGBTQ community and therefore it's okay to be racist. But it's not that easy and it's not that simple. Ultimately, liberation, pride, being able to be fully who you are, accomplish what you're able to accomplish, is essentially interconnected. You could draw a link between the steps that began in Juneteenth, the liberation of people from slavery when they were unable in many ways to express any part of their identity, when who they could marry, how they could live, whether or not they could care for their own children was taken from them, to the movements of pride, like to the Stonewall riots, where people in our society were prevented from expressing who they fully were by societal opprobrium, law, discrimination, violence, and even the threat of death, as we see in places like Uganda today. Ultimately, I would argue that liberation, true liberation, requires recognizing that none of us are free unless all of us are free. Free to be our fullest selves, free to rise up and achieve all that we can, free to love who we wish, to be who we are fundamentally, and not to be discriminated against for that or for who we fundamentally are. I think ultimately, that's what lies at the core of our celebrations, not just of freedom, but of pride. Being able to celebrate fundamentally being who we are, not having to excuse or hide or be enchained for who we are. Ultimately, if we want to say that we're going to deny one in order to honor the other, we're undermining both. Because history shows over and over again that movements to roll back rights, whether it be after the end of Reconstruction or elsewhere, don't just stop with one group's rights getting rolled back. It continues on until it's stopped by all of us standing together to fight for all of our rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menez. Do we have any other public comments on item 7A1?
Cordell Handler.
Can you hear me, Roxanne?
8A1, excuse me.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, so good evening again, Mayor Murphy, Council. I am Pinole Handler and I'm a Richmond resident. So you are all invited to attend the Juneteenth celebration in Richmond on June 17th. And there's going to be a festival afterwards. So everyone is invited, and that includes you all, Pinole. And for Pride, I agree with Raphael Menez about it. Because to me, I think Pride is supposed to be a celebration, you know, of expressing yourself. So in the words of the Anna Ross, you got to come out. You got to let the world to know. So I'm expressing myself, and I hope everyone should express themselves too. It doesn't matter if you're a LGBTQ or others. I mean, we are people too. So I'm proud to be supporting of LGBTQ. So that being said, I'll save my comments for the last proclamation.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on this item?
No, that concludes public comments.
Thank you. So we'll go next to our LGBTQIA+ Pride Month proclamation for June 2023. Whereas in June 1969, a courageous group of Americans rose up to protest the violence and marginalization they faced and what became known as the Stonewall Uprising. And
Whereas police had raided the Stonewall Inn, a gay bar located in New York City, and for the next 6 days, they clashed with the LGBTQIA+ protesters who bravely stood their ground. Their courage sparked a civil rights movement for the liberation of the LGBTQI+ community and changed our nation forever. And whereas Pride is a celebration of generations of LGBTQI+ people who have fought bravely to live openly and authentically, and
Whereas the city of Pinole feels it's important to communicate its support for inclusivity and respect in our city and desires to recognize and celebrate June as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month. And whereas the rainbow flag, also known as the LGBTQIA+ Pride Flag or Gay Pride Flag, has been used since the 1970s and is widely recognized as a symbol of pride, inclusion, and support for social movements that advocate for LGBTQIA plus people in society. And
Whereas all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, and LGBTQIA plus individuals have had immeasurable impact on the cultural, civic, and economic success of our country. And
Whereas the city of Pinole is committed to supporting visibility, dignity, and equality for LGBTQIA plus people in our diverse community. And whereas celebrating Pride Month influences awareness and provides support and advocacy for the city of Pinole's LGBTQIA plus community, and is an opportunity to take action and engage in dialogue to strengthen alliances, build acceptance, and advance equal rights.
And now therefore I, Devin T. Murphy, Mayor of the City of Pinole, County of Contra Costa, State of California, on behalf of the City Council of Pinole, proclaim June 2023 as LGBTQIA plus Pride Month in the City of Pinole, and call upon the residents of Pinole to support the equal rights of all residents. Happy Pride Month, everyone. And I'll ask our city clerks if we have any public comments on this item.
No more public comments.
All right. We will then read our last proclamation for this evening, which is our Philippines Independence Day proclamation, which proclaims June 12th, 2023 as Philippines Independence Day. Whereas the Philippines, consisting of more than 7,000 separate islands in the Western Pacific, was colonized by the Spanish in the latter part of the 16th century, and
Whereas opposition to Spanish rule began among Filipino priests who resented Spanish domination of the Roman Catholic churches in the islands, and whereas in the late 19th century, Filipino intellectuals and middle class began calling for independence, and whereas on June 12th marks the day the Philippines gained independence from Spain after being under its colonial rule for more than 4 centuries. And
whereas the Philippines found itself under another rule less than a year after declaring its independence, the Philippines was given to the United States by Spain as part of the 1898 Treaty of Paris Agreement when it lost the war against the US. And whereas the refusal to acknowledge the Philippines Declaration of Independence pushed Filipinos to revolt against the US, triggering the Philippine-American War that went on from 1899 to 1902. And
whereas it was only on July 4th, 1946 that the Philippines gained sovereignty through the Treaty of Manila. This prompted Filipinos to celebrate the country's independence on that date, which continued annually for 15 years until Philippine President Diosdado Macapagal officially changed the date back to June 12th. And whereas this year, the Philippines will mark its 125th year of independence from Spanish rule with the theme Kalayan, which means freedom or liberty in Tagalog. And
whereas Filipino Americans have contributed to the advancement of the city, state, and county, and whereas Benjamin Reyes II, former Pinole City attorney, was appointed as the first Filipino American judge in Contra Costa County, and whereas in December 2022, Cameron Sasai was elected to serve on the Pinole City Council as the first Filipino American since the city's founding.
And now therefore I, Devin T. Murphy, Mayor of the City of Pinole, County of Contra Costa, State of California, do hereby proclaim June 12th, 2023 as Philippines Independence Day in the City of Pinole, and encourage all residents to celebrate, honor, and reflect on the significant role that Filipino Americans have played in history of the United States and of course the City of Pinole. And I'll ask if we have any public comments on this item.
Yes, Cordell Hindler. Mr. Hindler, are you able to unmute yourself? Looks like he's having some technical difficulties, so we can come back.
Okay.
There are
that
no
sounds great.
other public comments.
All right, thank you so much. And again, thank you to our city staff for putting these proclamations together. To the public, we invite you again to our Pinole Pride celebration on Sunday, June 11th from 12 to 3 p.m. at Fernandez Park. We will be celebrating Juneteenth, LGBT Pride Month, as well as the 120th anniversary and 200th anniversary of the Pinole Land Grant and 120 years of incorporation of Pinole, which actually happens on the 29th of this month. So again, this Sunday at Fernandez Park from 12 to 3. And we of course invite the public as well next Saturday, June 17th at 10 a.m. to the Philippines Independence flag raising that's happening. And we are excited, and Councilor Sasai has been doing so much community work to put that community event on as well. So looking forward to those two events, and we invite the public to come out as well. Great. Well, we'll continue on with our agenda to item number 8B, presentations. We have a phenomenal group of young people here with us this evening from Pinole Valley High School debate team, the state champions, Pinole Valley High School debate teams. And they're here to talk to us about Independence. Absolutely. And they're here to talk to us about Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm wondering what they may have to say. We'll see. But again, I'll start, I think, with our advisor for the debate team, Miss Michelle Lamans. And I also see that we have the Pinole Valley High School principal here, Kibby Kleiman, as well. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Thank you. Can we have our presentation pulled up?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's visible for the audience and not us. Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Murphy, City Council members, and Pinole community. My name is Michelle Lamans Rayford. I'm the proud coach of Pinole Valley High School's Forensic Speech and Debate team. Today is about our effort to shake, break, and reimagine systemic issues when it comes to both acknowledging and celebrating the beautiful history of people of color. Today is about honoring our Indigenous ancestors. And in that spirit, I call the name of my great-grandmother, Julia Middleton, my ancestors in the Cherokee Nation, and all of our past and present Native elders from all Indigenous tribes. Today is about empowering and amplifying student voice while demonstrating the limitless potential students have to impact change. We also would like to acknowledge the efforts of Junior Alyssa Keller, who spent tireless hours editing and closed captioning our presentation, and Senior Nathaniel Atia, who had a work commitment this evening, both who were very instrumental in the research for this project and advocacy. Now we would hear from our students. Next slide, please.
My name is Elizabeth Barche. I'm a senior and a fourth-year forensic speech and debate student. It's vital that we acknowledge the land that we stand on, as well as the rich and diverse culture that California sits on. We take this time to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered. We pay homage and offer respect and gratitude for the citizens of tribal nations and their enduring relationships with the land. Native American settlement on the West Contra Costa shoreline began at least 5,000 years ago. The Pinole region is territory of the Hutchian and the Ohlone people, who remember the struggles and tragedies of the people who first called this land home, while never forgetting to acknowledge that the institutions and campuses of the West Contra Costa Unified School District occupy traditional territories of Indigenous lands. With honor to our past and present Native American citizens, who are the first true inhabitants of this land we call America, I propose the city of Pinole establish and declare an official proclamation of Indigenous Peoples Day to be celebrated on the second Monday of October every year to acknowledge, recognize, and celebrate the lives of Indigenous people. Next slide, please. My name is Harper Isles. I'm a sophomore at Pinole Valley High School, and this is my first year in speech and debate. Here is a table of data that shows us statistics on the different ethnicities we have in Pinole. And based on this data, there are 84 listed Native Americans in our city. Next slide, please. As Indigenous Peoples Day, the first Monday of October is nationally recognized as a federal holiday. I propose that the city of Pinole establish and declare an official proclamation of Indigenous Peoples Day to be celebrated on the second Monday of October every year, as to give time to celebrate the beautiful and diverse cultures that America and the city is built upon. The Indigenous Peoples Day as a holiday, the California Department of Education has recognized Indigenous Peoples Day as a holiday. We as a diverse city should work toward cultural awareness, inclusion, and acceptance, as the California Department of Education has, in order to create an inclusive city for all community members. Next slide, please.
Hello, my name is Gibson Meeker. I'm a senior and this is my third year in speech and debate. It is important for the city of Pinole to include a proclamation for Indigenous Peoples Day because it shows their support for underrepresented communities. Here is a slide of the West Contra Costa Unified School District's resolution number 2223.71 dated April 12th, 2023, which is the official recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day. Next slide, please.
My name is Sheila McKinney, and this is my fourth year in speech and debate. We propose that the city of Pinole establish and declare an official proclamation of Indigenous Peoples Day because it's important that we are culturally inclusive to everyone. We want a city that reflects all of its people. If the city of Pinole puts this into perspective, culture accessibility allows people to perceive the world from other cultures' perspectives. People may successfully traverse a more multicultural future by developing empathy, adaptability, and the ability to work with others from many cultures. It creates allies who fight for the liberation of everyone, regardless of differences. This is what we hope to develop in our community of learners who will inevitably take these values out into the world. Next slide, please.
My name is Ashley Chumba. I'm a junior and first year speech and debate member. The importance of recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day cannot be understated. It is the act of embracing and acknowledging a culture that has long been disregarded and destroyed. We as people living in this country should make the conscious choice to celebrate this land and its original inhabitants. While Indigenous cultures and all cultures should be celebrated all 365 days of the year, the least we could do as a city is acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day on the City of Pinole calendar to prevent the potential erasures of such cultures. This is an opportunity that should be taken to highlight and uplift the voices of those that have been overlooked for so long. Next slide, please.
My name is Sophia Lopez. I am a sophomore and a first year speech and debate member. I propose that our community members be able to say that our city appreciates the true heritage of America by having the city of Pinole establish and declare an official proclamation of Indigenous Peoples Day. The president has already, with the official almanac, California's governor has, and the cities of Berkeley and San Francisco have consistently celebrated it as well. Furthermore, missing Indigenous people now have an alert of their own because law enforcement in California recognize that this already small minority group is being targeted and needs to be protected. This is called the Feather Alert, and it brings active participation from Native American communities to help find them. Our nation, community, and city needs to uplift and cherish Native American culture, including members of my own family, who are descendants of the Inca tribe. This proclamation will show our city that we acknowledge our Indigenous tribes as the land's original founders. Next slide, please.
My name is Rennie Snook. I'm a senior and this is my first year in speech and debate. Indigenous Peoples Day is significant enough to be brought to a proclamation by the city of Pinole because it honors Indigenous people from our past and present. It is important because it brings rich Indigenous culture to light and allows us to celebrate their heritage. It is essential that our city acknowledges and respects the impact of the first inhabitants of this land. Next slide, please. The following map data indicates states and counties in the US that have already begun making changes to the calendar, with some outright replacing Columbus Day in favor of Indigenous Peoples Day. Now we will have a video message from Mike Raccoon Eyes Kinney, who is an elder in the Cherokee Nation. Next slide, please.
I don't believe the video can play within the format that we received it in. We can try, I'll work with them to see if they can put it up.
All right, hopefully we can get Mike Raccoon Eyes Kenny's video to play because he has had to have a medical procedure today and he is not able to come in person. So he did send a video message. So hopefully we can get that done. We would like to thank him for sending the message and hopefully you all will be blessed with it. We're asking that the following language be added to the City of Pinole's proclamation when it comes. Whereas the City of Pinole acknowledges that Indigenous peoples are the true Native Americans, as they are the first inhabitants and caretakers of the land now called America. And whereas the City of Pinole recognizes and honors the land that is currently home to many past and current city-owned properties as historical Aboriginal territories and Indigenous lands. And whereas the City of Pinole joins the President of the United States and the Governor of California by acknowledging, honoring, and celebrating the perseverance and rich diversity of Indigenous people, as well as the contributions and immeasurable positive impact that Indigenous people have made to every aspect of American society. Whereas the City of Pinole also joins the Governor of California in solidarity and support of Native and Indigenous-led movements towards balance, reciprocity, and respect. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Pinole hereby and henceforth recognizes the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day. Next slide, please. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We look forward to partnering with the City of Pinole in our effort to acknowledge, honor, and celebrate the contributions of Indigenous people in America. And I will work on sending you another form of the video. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. We may have a couple questions for you all, if you don't mind. Okay, I was going to say before you leave, yes, please, just in case we have council questions. First of all, I just want to say thank you for coming to the council chambers, which is your chambers. One of the highlights of being in this role as a council member is when people are in the chamber helping us make decisions. So I just want to honor you all and say thank you for coming, because this is the way that we actually govern. We govern a lot easier when folks come to tell us what you think our city should be doing, as opposed to us making those decisions without you. So I just want to honor you all on that. Number two, I want to say thank you so much for your excellent scholarship and leadership as debate champions. We are, as a council, not only so proud of you, but we are so honored to be able to represent superior students like yourself who are doing so much incredible work inside and outside of the classroom. Because we know that it is very hard to be a good student. It's also very difficult to be a good student who also does other extracurricular activities. And in the last couple of years, there's been a lot going on in the world. So again, thank you all for stepping up to the plate and making our city look so proud. We want to make sure you know how appreciative of you we are. And last but not least, I wanted to just make your presentation an easy answer for you, is that we would love to have a proclamation for Indigenous Peoples Day. And we look forward to including your recommended language in our proclamation this year. For some of you sophomores and juniors, we hope to see you at that meeting later on this year. And then maybe if the seniors, if you have some time for us, I know some of y'all going to college, don't forget about those small people here in Pinole. If you all feel comfortable coming back to our council chambers, we'd love to have you at that meeting as well. So again, we are happy to have that proclamation. Thank you for sharing the language with us to integrate that into our new proclamation. Again, that's a part of our co-governance model, and we actually really appreciate that coming from you. So I'll say that just two things that could be of interest. And usually when folks come and make comments, sometimes as council members, we say, we actually need your help too. And I'm, as your mayor, going to ask you for some help. One of them is what you heard in my video statement earlier today, which is that our city seal is going through a redevelopment process itself. As you see behind me, we have had the city seal, I believe, for 60, 70 years. We have gotten from our relationships locally with some indigenous communities, we've gotten some feedback that perhaps our city seal is not as appropriate for their communities as we may have sought it out to be. And so there's an open process right now, which two of our council members who are actually virtual tonight, they are really fostering a public process to figure out what that new city seal could look like, what would be more appropriate. And so what I heard you say was acknowledging indigenous peoples is a powerful way to show respect and honor their communities in all of our communities. And so as this is another process that we have in our city, the proclamation is one of those steps. Another step could be this new process around the city seal. So would love to hear your ideas either tonight or you can send them to us about what perhaps our city seal could look like for the next 60 years. And if you know of anyone who would be interested in giving that feedback, let us know. We want to hear from you. And we'll be happy to send you that survey too that we have going out.
I'll go ahead and start if that's okay.
Of course, of course.
One of the things that we learned, I'm hoping that they learned, is that when we're doing these advocacy proclamations, et cetera, it's important to have native voice. And so that's why we have Mike Raccoonize Kinney. We also solicited a couple of other elders in the community. So my first recommendation would be absolutely get student advocacy, absolutely get community member advice, but you really need to talk to the native elders. You need to talk to the community, whereas that is the community that's going to input if you're going to use an image from that community. That's what we did when we did our research. That is what we want to hear their voices as well. So that would be my first recommendation, is to make sure that the community involved is represented. That'd be my first advice.
Absolutely.
I would like to say that, consent is very important in this matter. When you hear feedback from Native American communities saying that maybe this isn't okay, or this could be changed in a way that everyone can accept, that's something that we need to, the entire city of Pinole needs to appreciate and address when choosing a seal that represents all of us. I feel as though the image carrying a person of a brown skin tone really resonates and connects with me. So my personal opinion and my comment is that I really appreciated how we shone a sort of spotlight on brown communities, maybe not just indigenous, but also other brown communities like Latin and South Asian. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll just say one last thing before you all go is Pinole's a small place, but there is a lot of space in Pinole. And part of honoring our indigenous community can also be about identifying areas of our community where perhaps we can honor or have a actual piece or space or physical location. So as you think about going around the community, as you think around your school, and I mean, how many of you walk to school? Great, yeah. Those experiences, think about where we can honor and share this acknowledgement of indigenous peoples. We'd love to hear back from you about some of the things we can do in addition to our proclamation. But again, thank you so much for your presentation. We would love to add that language. I think Ms. Lamans, you had sent over the language to us already, which is wonderful. And then I know we do have a video as well that we'll listen to. And I'll ask in the meantime until that video comes up, does council have any questions? Council member Tate?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for this presentation. One word that comes to mind is impressive. I think coming to council and doing this type of work is fantastic. I almost feel, and I think the rest of the council might agree, what are your thoughts on climate action and roads and other topics that we sometimes wrestle with till 2 o'clock in the morning? This is very succinct. I think it's on point, and it's just refreshing. to have you guys do this work and really chase it all the way down to the communities and the community of interest and bringing that back to the council. I just want to point out, like, this is how our government works. And you guys did a great job. And I'm not sure, I mean, we get these, but I can't remember the last time. Usually we bring these to council, but to hear it from the community is really refreshing. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members? Counselor Mayor Pro Tem Toms, and then we'll go to Counselor Sasai.
Sure. I want to thank you all for coming. Some of you, just after a few days after you've graduated, and congratulations to those of you who just recently graduated. I'm looking at the calendar, and we do cancel our first meeting in October. So I just want to have staff maybe take a look and see if we can put this on our agenda for September 19th, so we can do the proclamation before the day that needs to be recognized. Thank you.
Great. Counselor Sasai.
Yes, first and foremost, congratulations to our graduates, and congratulations to our debate champions. Thank you so much for showing up and putting in the work to put this presentation together, to show up to City Hall and give this presentation to us as a council and as a public. This is really what equity and inclusion and reparative work looks like in real life, and what it looks like in government as well. So I really do encourage you all to keep showing up, keep putting in the work, and keep advocating, because it does matter. It does make a difference, and it makes me very, very proud. So thank you once again.
And we'll go to Counselor Martinez Rubin.
Thank you. I want to thank the adults who have fostered this interest in debate. So the forensic team is certainly a place, an opportunity, an experience that is going to that has afforded you a way to make what you believe is important heard in a manner that encourages learning from each other and learning, having audiences learn from you. So as a lifelong learner, I appreciate hearing from those who impart a message with the public being a learning audience in mind. And for those of you who have Indigenous roots, be proud of that. That, along with education, is something that no one will ever take away from you, no matter where you present yourself. And also some of the Indigenous traditions about what is accomplishment and what is success and what is important and what is of value goes back to appreciation for the kinds of things that don't always have a monetary equivalent, and yet remain, or ought to remain, as enduring. The land that we're on, the natural space that we occupy, and the appreciation for that. Often we forget in a world that doesn't, or systems that don't always adhere to similar values. You probably got some guidance, have gotten some guidance from other adults in your environment. And if you haven't, it seems to me that you've been surrounded by some who share that kind of notion. So thank you both to the forensic team, the youth, as well as the adults that help foster their preparation to go on to continue their studies and be involved in activities where it may not be as easy to either express or be heard. You also live in a time where there's been somewhat of in a positive way, a turnaround to acknowledge ethnic upbringing, the pride in ethnic minority status. And that eventually will turn to not be compared to a majority status. We're gradually getting there, and we're seeing some of the fruits of that. So you've taken me back to high school days and college days when that kind of discussion was barely touched upon in the clubs that were specific to certain ethnic groups. The discussion continues, the debates continue. And so preparing yourself for having a conversation that is welcoming and open and encourages people to think is something to applaud. So thank you all.
Thank you. And I think we'll conclude with the video and we'll go to public comment after that.
Good evening. My name is Mike Raccoon Eyes Kenny, and I'm a native man. I am with the East Band of Cherokee, and I am currently the National Vice President for the United Urban Warriors Society of the United States and Canada. We are one of Indian country's largest native organizations. We are about helping to promote more human and civil rights for Indian country. And as well, I am the San Francisco Bay Area delegate for the Intertribal Council of California. Both of these national organizations have been working closely with Pinole Valley High School students who are members of the Debate and Speech Club, and we have been supporting them and working with them from the very beginning of this project. I urge this honorable council tonight to please vote yes and support this wonderful proclamation that these students have brought forth to you. And as well, by supporting the students, you're also supporting the tribal people of California. Thank you very much. Waro and aho. Good evening.
Thank you. We'll go to our city clerk to ask for any public comments on this item.
Yes, Rafael Menes.
Good evening again, Rafael Menes, resident of Pinole. And I'd like to start my comments by congratulating the debate team, both as state champions and also for having the courage to come to the council and collectively share their thoughts and opinions on why the city should adopt this proposed proclamation in honor of our Indigenous communities and Indigenous communities in this country more generally. Well, I appreciate the intent of honoring the adults who may have inspired them. I think that ultimately tonight we should recognize the people who made the presentation, the students and their teacher who took the time and work to research the presentation, to put it together, and to actually physically be here and present it to us. They may have been inspired by their peers, they may have been inspired by elders, but ultimately they're the ones who did the work, regardless of their own ethnic or cultural background. Some people, some of the presenters had links to our Indigenous communities, others did not, but they all stood together, united to share their collective position that they believe the city should adopt a proclamation in support of Indigenous Peoples Day to be a better and more inclusive city. And I would like to join them in urging the council to adopt this proclamation at such time as it feels proper. I'm not sure whether the Brown Act permits it to be adopted outright tonight, but I would encourage the city council, if it's not permitted to adopt this proclamation tonight, to have a future agenda item to have it be adopted as soon as it's feasible, so that the city can honor Indigenous Peoples Day on October 9th and recognize the contributions and background impact of the original and continuing inhabitants of this native land and all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any?
Yes, we do have one telephone caller, last four numbers 5748. Please state your name and city of residence.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Please state your name and city of residence.
Yes, my name is Anthony, longtime 40+ year citizen taxpayer of Pinole, city of Pinole. I'd like to echo the comment of Mr. Menes in honoring the indigenous people by requesting that the council approve the proclamation and in support of the indigenous people. I would also like to thank the Pinole debate team from Pinole Valley High School that did a really good job in their planning, preparation, and all the work they put in to their presentation this evening to do a super bang up job there. But also I would like to request of the city council and mayor, as I have done, and I know a few other people have done in the past, with regard to the indigenous people, or maybe more specifically the Ohlone Indians. We have the land acknowledgement that they read before each of our staff meetings or that are council meetings within the city. But I may be off here, but I'm going on record by restating that Pinole, as small or big a city as they are one of the only few cities in the Bay Area that do not and have not assigned and given honor to embrace the indigenous Ohlone Indians by giving them some formal name designation of a property in and around Pinole. And I suggested like maybe the Adobe Road Trail could be along the creek, could be named after the Ohlone Indian, that trail behind the dog park and the caretaker's house, or some other creek along the in Pinole that could maybe we could get help and assistance from the people on the Pinole Historical Society to pick out a location. But I challenged them, the city council and mayor, before the September, October proclamation date, that they have actively put on their agenda to adopt a name like City of El Cerrito and other cities and City of Hercules. They have like more than one or two names of schools, buildings, Ohlone BART trails along El.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments?
No, there are no more public comments.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much to our public commenters. Thank you for the Pinole Valley High School debate team's presentation. We really do appreciate it. And as we mentioned to you, we will be updating our proclamation as your recommendation holds. But we're also looking forward to working together. Like I said, specifically for you sophomores and juniors continuing on. If there are other issues from climate action to some of the things that were just talked about this evening, please let us know how we can partner together. We're really excited about the co-governing model of our youth and our residents coming and sharing ideas that make this community better. So continue to keep us and pressure us to do better. We have a long ways to go. We've come some far, but we all know we have a long ways to go as well. So thank you so much. All right, thank you. That means we're going to continue on with our agenda to item number 9, which is our consent calendar. I'll ask if the council has any items that they'd like to pull first. Councilmember Sasai?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to pull item 9I just for a separate vote.
Okay. Any other items council would like to pull? Not seeing any. We'll go to public comments. Do we have any public comments on the consent calendar?
Yes, Rafael Menes has submitted a card for 9A, C, F, L, M, and P.
Okay, we'll take your public comments, sir.
Good evening again. My name is Rafael Menes. I am a resident of Pinole. And I have comments on a fair number of the consent calendar items tonight because we have a large number of consent calendar items. I'll try to move through them as quickly as possible. First, the minutes. I wanted to thank the city clerk's office for updating the minutes for I believe the April 29th meeting to more accurately reflect my comments at that meeting, being more in line with the concept of co-governance, as Mayor Murphy noted, and as other council members have noted throughout the meeting. Ultimately, you know, power in our system of government flows from and belongs to the people. The people can propose laws by initiative. The people can recall electors by the power of recall. The people elect our public servants through, you know, our regular elections. So I think it was important to have that be clarified, and I appreciate it being clarified. I'd also like to, within the minutes, praise the work done on item 9 for the May 16th meeting, page 9 of the minutes, page 31 of 829 of the agenda packet. I'd like to praise the work done on that page to have a more detailed recap, I guess, or restatement of what was said, not just by me, but by several of the speakers under that item. I appreciate it as a matter of opinion. I recognize that due to constraints of lengths, the city clerk's office often doesn't have verbatim minutes like it's done for the planning commission, but I think it would be beneficial to have that more frequently, just as a point of opinion. For item 9, let's see, I think this was 9C, yes, I wanted to praise the chart on the very last 2 pages. So page number 153 and 152 of 829 in the agenda packet. It's great to have this visualization of the ways in which various projects have been delayed and implemented, allowing to compare them across category and across time. It's an excellent chart. I wanted to praise staff for putting it together. And I'd appreciate it being highlighted more broadly in, you know, like city presentations of the city's website, because being able to have concrete information like this about how projects have progressed over time, how they've been delayed, whether certain projects in particular categories have been delayed more than other projects in other categories, it's really helpful just as a visual aid for helping people in our community just see, oh, hey, this is how things work. This is how things didn't work. This is how things delayed, when they were delayed, and so on. More so than reading through, you know, hundreds of pages of documents to try and tie things together. So I just wanted to say a few words in praise of that chart in particular. Let's see. For item 9F, I had a question about on page, I believe it was 168 of 829. It was stated that materials and supplies were 103% of the amended budget, primarily due to purchases of fuel. And I was curious as to the cause for that, because so it's my understanding that the cost of fuel had, relatively speaking, decreased over the past year compared to when the budget was established and amended, whether that was just due to increased uses that were anticipated in the budget or due to some sort of cost issues or some other cause. Let's see, I had a question about page 381, but staff already did a correction for that. On page 393 out of 829, so that would be 9L, I believe. There was mention of visual aids, which I think were primarily linked to the city's website. And I was curious whether the city, as part of creating broader public awareness of the payment condition index, would consider putting up banners or signs near certain areas that are particularly negatively impacted in terms of payment conditions, saying like, this is a segment of payment condition that's of condition 30 or 40 or 50 or 70, just to have like concrete areas in the community where people passing by can see, oh, so that's what the payment condition index of this area that I'm driving over is, like a little sign with maybe a photo of the intersection saying, this is PCI 30 or 40 or 50, rather than just having it as a website item, having it as a concrete thing in the community that people can interact with and experience and integrate into their understanding, saying, oh, hey, this is what that condition actually means in terms of my neighborhood, in terms of this patch of road that I pass over. And here's what it looks like elsewhere when I see a sign somewhere else that says this condition is better concretely. just as a way to make the whole idea of payment condition index more concrete in a way that it may not necessarily be on a website, as it were. Let's see. On page 396 for item 9M, so that would be 396 out of 829. I noticed that the budgeting suggestion for that item was to shift from hiring a staff member to spend a broader amount across multiple fiscal years, sort of to be allocated in one item to hire a consultant to implement sort of the various processes associated with the economic development branding. And I was curious as to whether that meant the city would be planning not to continue expenditures on the economic development director position after FY 23-24, or that the nature of the role would be changing so that hiring would be appropriate at that time. Then I have a few questions linked to the report on how the city is preparing to apply for funds from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, item 9P, starting on page 463 out of 829. My first inquiry was if the city had completed the broadband study, would that likely have made it eligible for funds in the broadband funding portion of the IIJA, as mentioned on page, I believe, 462, where it discusses the broadband funding portion of the bipartisan infrastructure law. My second question was with regards to, I guess, several points in there, but in particular, page 469, the bridge replacement, rehabilitation, preservation, protection, and construction program, whether the city was considering applying for funds from that program or for any of the other grant programs related to bridge repair to fill in the still substantial needs, as I understand it, for the replacement of the San Pablo Bridge between Pinole and Hercules, or to a lesser extent for the other bridges within Pinole that also need maintenance and repair, but particularly for that bridge, because I believe that one had the largest gap in needed funding and was by far the largest amount. Let's see, on page number 484 and ongoing, I noted that a lot of the deadlines for the grant opportunities were in February, March, so on and so forth, but that there were some deadlines that were still available in, I believe, see if I can find the exact one. There was one in the summer. Yes, the Bridge Investment Program in summer of 2023. And that's on page 490 of 829 in the agenda packet. And I was curious as to whether the city was planning to or would be able to apply for funds if it was not past the grant deadline, given that at other points of the agenda, we're talking about the city still setting up its grant application process. So there may not be the capacity to do that application yet. And then I believe that concludes my comments for the consent calendar items. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on the consent calendar?
No, there are no more public comments.
Okay. Mr. Menes, you had a number of questions. Can I ask that you email those to the staff and they'll get back to you? Wonderful. Thank you. Does the council have any other items that they'd like to pull? All right. There was an item for item number 9I.
I'll separate that one out and move approval of 9I.
Approval of everything besides 9I?
No, 9I, just 9I.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. Not seeing any. City Clerk Bell, please call the roll.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Councilmember Tave,
Yes.
Councilmember Sasai,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. And for the rest of the consent calendar, are there any motions?
Approval of the remainder of the consent calendar.
All right.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion from council? All right, City Clerk Bell, please call the roll.
Council members Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Tave,
Yes.
Sasai,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you so much. And that brings us to our next item, which is item number 10, 10A for public hearings. That's the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual review of utility users tax and adoption of a resolution modifying household income eligibility thresholds for utility users tax exemptions for fiscal year 2023 through 2024. Director Guillory, good evening.
Good evening. So for this item, I'll be providing an overview of the city's utility users tax. This is the annual review for the fiscal year 2022-23. Next slide. So to provide some background, the city does levy a utility users tax, which is 8% on the value of public utilities, services consumed within city limits for electricity and gas, as well as telecommunications. The UUT was initially approved by voters in 1998. It was also extended in 2004, 2012, and 2018 with no sunset date. So this is an ongoing permanent source of revenue for the city. The UUT is the fourth largest general fund revenue source. It's about 8% of total general fund revenues. As a part of this public hearing and the requirement for, according to the, or pursuant to the Pinole Municipal Code, it requires that staff conducts an annual review through a public hearing, which we're doing with this item. And it also sets the low income thresholds for certain community members who may be eligible for exemptions from the electricity, gas, and telecommunication UUT. Next slide. So the annual review is pursuant to Pinole Municipal Code, and it requires that this is conducted in June during the budget process. We provide some historical information and current data on UUT collections, focusing on the amounts that have been realized in the various segments of the UUT. And we also present to the City Council for adoption a resolution to change the household income levels for the UUT exemptions. Next slide, please. So this table depicts the last 10 years of UUT collections for gas and electricity, as well as telecommunications. So there's a primary trend that we see here is that 10 years ago in fiscal year 2013-14, we see that gas and electricity made up about 68% of total UUT, and telecommunications was at 32% of UUT. If we look at the current fiscal year, the projected column, which is the last column for the fiscal year 2022-23, we see that most of the collections for UUT comes from gas and electricity at 88%, and 12% of total UUT comes from telecommunications. And that's just mostly due to some changes in the industry with regard to telecommunications. Many consumers have moved away from traditional modes of telephone use, and some of those the UUT cannot be applied to. So for instance, internet telephones, the UUT is not applied to that. So with the changes in landlines and cell phones, and the telecommunications industry has changed the makeup of the UUT collections. Next slide, please. So drilling down to the specific segments, we look at gas and electricity. As I mentioned, you can see over the last 10 years, if we look at the trend line over on the right side, we can see that those collections continue to increase. They do align with any changes, mostly increases in the rates for gas and electricity that are set forth by Pacific Gas and Electricity. If we compare the current fiscal year projected collections to the last fiscal year, we're looking at collecting about $1.8 million, which is a 1% increase from last year. And again, we see the change in the composition where last year gas and electricity was about 87% of total collections. For this year, it's at about 88% of total collections, and we continue to see increases, which has also been built into the fiscal year 2023-24 budget. Next slide. Looking at the telecommunications specifically, we see the downward trend over the last 10 years, so steadily declining from 10 years ago through today. Comparing the last 2 fiscal years, we're looking at a 3% increase or a 3% decrease from the last fiscal year. And then also, again, just looking at the composition is that the telecommunications collections continue to be less in comparison to the total UUT collected. Next slide. So a part of this annual review is to look at the amounts collected, but also to set the exemption guidelines for those individual households and some businesses that may be exempt from the UUT tax. And the exemption guidelines are based on the California Alternative Rates for Energy. This is also known as the CARE program. It is administered through PG&E, and it's approved by the California Public Utilities Commission. There are a number of guidelines that that individuals or households have to follow to be eligible for the exemptions, and there are income thresholds that are set each year. The new guidelines they go into effect on June 1st, 2023, and they go through May 31st of 2024. You also have in the agenda packet as an attachment, the CARE guidelines from PG&E as well. The same income guidelines also are used for the UUT telecommunication exemption. The only difference here is that PG&E administers the CARE program, and so they do the recertifications and everything for us on an annual basis. So they're reviewing those and also certifying that those households continue to be eligible for exemptions. For any requested telecommunications exemptions, the household would apply directly to the city. So we do have the application on the city's website, and they would apply directly to the city, and we use the same income guidelines that are used for the CARE program. Next slide. So here is the table that shows the recommended changes to the income exemption thresholds for the upcoming fiscal year. And in the middle column, those are the current CARE thresholds, and just provided the previous just so you can compare the two to see how they've changed over the last year. But those are the ones that we use for both gas and electricity as well as telecommunications exemptions. And so staff is asking the city council to adopt a resolution approving the new thresholds. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Director Guillory. We'll go to council for questions. Mayor Pro Tem Toms, Councilmember Tate.
Quick question. How many people are on the program now?
So we receive on a quarterly basis a list of households. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I could get that to you.
Thank you. Councilor Martinez Rubin, any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Sasai, any questions?
Yes, just one. For cities who do not use PG&E's CARE program to, or as a basis to determine exemptions from the user's utility tax, how do they determine exemptions?
They will usually have their own set of guidelines, and there are some cities that administer their own exemption programs.
Got it. And do they tend to be more inclusive than the sort of, I guess, thresholds that we have from the PG&E CARE system?
I'm not sure about that because I haven't reviewed many. I will say for the most part, most cities use the CARE program as the guideline.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'd be interested to know about the number of households. Are you able to also let us know the number of households that are on the CARE program as well?
It wouldn't, no, it's just those that are exempted from our UUT.
Right.
Tax.
So you would
So-
know the number of households that
Yes, it would be the number of households, and that's the extent of what we can share
Wonderful.
from that list.
That's perfect.
Yes.
That would be great if you can send that to the council as a follow-up. We're open up the public comment we'll open the public hearing for public comment. Do we have any public comments on this item?
There are no public comments.
Okay. All right, well, seeing no public comments, then we'll close the public hearing and we'll go back to council for other questions, comments, or any motions.
I'll move that we adopt the resolution modifying the household income eligibility thresholds for exemptions from the UUT for fiscal year 23-24.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is the motion clear for the city clerk? Wonderful. Do we have any questions or comments about the motion? All right, City Clerk Bell, please call the roll.
Thank you. Council members Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Tave,
Yes.
Sasai,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. And thank you again, Director Guillory, for that presentation. I will continue on to item 11A, which is our revised proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 operating and capital budget. Back to you.
Wait for the slide deck to go up. Good evening again. For this item, I will be providing an overview of the revised proposed operating and capital budget for the fiscal year 2023-24. Next slide. Staff's recommendation is for the City Council to review the revised proposed budget and to provide direction to staff for any changes to be incorporated into the next draft of the document, which would be the final proposed version. Next slide. We'll look at some of our key dates that are coming up in the process until we get to adoption, and then also putting together our long-term financial plan. For tonight, we have the revised proposed operating and capital budget, as well as the revised proposed 5-year capital improvement plan. For June 20th, we are preparing to present to the City Council for adoption, the fiscal year 2023-24 final proposed operating and capital budget, as well as the GAN limit, or also known as the annual appropriations limit, and the final proposed 5-year capital improvement plan. We do have a placeholder in the calendar for June 27th, just in case a special City Council meeting is needed to adopt the final budget. The fiscal year begins on July 1st, so it's important that we have the budget adopted prior to that date. And then for the months of May through September, we are working on the development of a more robust long-term financial plan. So that process has started, and we'll be coming back to the City Council regularly with updates on that and bringing a draft of the long-term financial plan in September for your review. So just going back and providing a reminder of the city structurally balanced budget policy. This is the policy that we work within to develop the city's annual budget. This policy applies to the general fund, which includes the Measure S 2006 and 2014 funds. And the city strives to create a proposed general fund operating budget that is structurally balanced. What that means is that total ongoing general fund revenues meet or exceed total general fund operating expenditures. And this is to ensure the sustainability of service in the city, as well as expenditure levels, by ensuring that the budget is balanced on an annual basis. Next slide. Some of the highlights from the fiscal year 2023-24 revised proposed budget is that the baseline budget for revenues and expenditures are consistent with the prior year's forecast. And what that means is there are no major assumptions included in the budget in terms of service levels and staffing. There were some staffing changes, or actually a decrease in staffing due to the transition of the fire department to ComFire. But other than that, there were no major changes to staffing. For the balanced budget position, we are balanced with revenues at $25.6 million and expenditures at $25.5 million. We're projecting a small surplus of $71,000. While we're projecting a surplus, still the city does not really have the capacity to add any major new activities or expenditures to the budget without making adjustments in other areas to keep it balanced. And then also important to note that one-time budget items that we'll see in the few slides coming up will be funded by available fund balance, or what is also known as the unassigned fund balance. Next slide. So here's a breakdown of the fiscal year 2023-24 general fund baseline budget. So it's changed slightly since the last version, again, in that we're now seeing a surplus of about $71,000. As I mentioned, the revenues are at 25.6. The total expenditures are at 25.5, and we're again looking at a small surplus there, excuse me. Next slide. So this graphic here depicts the major components of the revised proposed budget. There are three main components that make up the budget. So we're looking at a total budget of $34.5 million. That includes our baseline budget of $25.5 million. This is our ongoing operating budget. We add in our one-time budget items of $2.2 million. Those include one-time items such as one-time initiatives that were directed by the city council. And then also a number of operating items that staff are proposing to include in the budget that are one-time items. And that detailed listing is included in the budget as well as the staff report. It also includes the capital improvement projects in the amount of $6.7 million. If we add the two together, the one-time plus the capital improvement projects, we're projecting to use about roughly $9 million of unassigned fund balance or available fund balance within the general fund, including the Measure S funds. So the idea of this is just to show the various components that make up the total revised proposed budget. Next slide. So we've looked at the revenues, we've looked at total expenditures. That brings us to our fund balances, what's left over after we consider those two factors. So we're looking at starting the fiscal year on July 1st with a fund balance of $9.8 million. We add to that a projected surplus of $71,000. If we back out the one-time initiatives and capital projects of $8.2 million, plus the transfer to the general reserve to meet our reserve policy of $765,000, we are projecting an ending unassigned fund balance at the end of the fiscal year 2023-24 in the amount of $955,000. For the general reserve fund balance, once we transfer over the $765,000, we are projecting a balance of $10.3 million. Again, this meets our general fund reserve policy. And then for the pension trust, at the end of the fiscal year 2023-24, we're projecting an ending balance of $13.1 million. That is after the transfer to the general fund to cover those rising pension costs or the city's contribution to CalPERS. Next slide. So overall, this is all of the city's funds, and we built this table out a bit to provide a summary of all of the beginning fund balances, the total revenues that are budgeted, total budgeted expenditures, and then also if we're projecting to use or contribute to the fund balance for all of the city's funds. And then in the last column there, we have the estimated ending fund balance at the end of the fiscal year 2023-24. One thing that's important to highlight is that for capital projects, we are budgeting the full cost of the projects in the first year of the capital improvement plan. In that case, the fiscal year 2023-24 is the first year. And the purpose of that is to earmark those funds to make sure that they're available, even though the project may span several years from start to finish. We want to make sure that we're earmarking those funds for those specific projects. Next slide, please. So if we look at the total, we see that we're projecting to start with an overall balance across all funds of $72.8 million. We have total budgeted revenues at $47.2 million, total budgeted expenditures at $76.5 million. Again, most of that is earmarking the capital projects up front. We're projecting to use around $29.2 million of fund balance across all funds and ending with an estimated balance of $43.5 million. Next slide, please. So as a part of the budget process, in order to engage the community and get input in addition to community members being welcome to voice their opinions at the city council meetings, also interacting directly with staff on questions that they may have, we do also launch an annual survey. So this year we launched the Community Budget Priority Survey. This is the second year that we've done this survey using the Balancing Act online platform. And we sent notification out to all addresses in Pinole. We also posted the links to the survey on the city's website, as well as the city's social media page. And self-selected community members were asked to choose their top 5 priorities based on this menu of options and to rank them in order of importance, with 1 being the highest and 5 being the lowest. The survey was launched on April 20th, 2023. And as of May 31st, 2023, we received 234 submissions and still counting. And this information can be used not only to inform decisions around the budget, but also for long-term financial planning. Next slide, please. And included in the staff report also is the survey results. So we look at it from 2 views. We look at the unweighted, and then we also looked at the weighted. As we can see in the table on the left, those were all of the priorities that they were chosen, the number of times they were chosen as a priority before they were even ranked. And then the table over on the right is the weighted priorities. So once the item was chosen and then how it was ranked was factored in. As we can see from both of those, the top 5 priorities are pavement maintenance and rehabilitation, parks and facilities maintenance, public safety services, community services, and economic development. And the ranking changed a little bit between the 2, but as we can see in both of those are the top 5 priorities collectively from those community members who did participate in the survey. So just wanted to share some of those results as we continue to go through the budget process, as well as prepare to develop our long-term financial plan. Next slide. So the next steps in this process will be to evaluate any council member changes, if you have any tonight, and incorporate those into the final proposed budget. We'll also do another quality check internally and also review and include any staff generated content that we'll need to add to the final proposed budget document. And then on June 20th to present the final proposed budget for adoption. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you again for your presentation. We'll go to our council for any questions. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Tom.
I have no questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Tate.
Just the question of the 274,000 shortfall that we had in the previous budget. In this report, it mentions that we found that to eliminate the gap in the general fund. It sounds like there's a surplus. What was the elimination that got us to a balanced budget?
Yeah, so going back to the $274,000, we went back to the departments. We came up with a percentage back into the number and said if every department could take a look at their expenditures and see if there's any room to trim it down a bit. So we asked for more precise estimates on budgets, things that were, everything is essential, but things that if we're looking at priorities, what are some of those things that were not as essential that we could do away with for now. So that was a part of it. And then also the city worked with Compire on the contract agreement. And after doing some fine tuning and some review on that, we found some savings there as well, which resulted in the surplus.
That's roughly about 1% of the total.
It was, yes, we asked for about 1%. Yes.
Just for the public,
Mhm.
not that much, but it's just a testament to the staff and their work. So thank you.
All right. Councilor Martinez Rubin, any questions?
Thank you. With the general fund balance being less than $1 million, it's striking that it is that figure relative to 3 years ago, say. And thank you for taking us through the explanation of how the funds have been allotted for either projects that were started. Well, first of all, that we have a structurally balanced budget so that the ongoing expenses, there will be revenues for the ongoing expenses. Years prior, and this is just taking us back to the to when I joined the council in 2018, it seemed that having a several $1 million as general fund was as general fund balance were discretionary funds that seem to provide some degree of comfort, perhaps also tempting to use them because they were there. But I think as I've learned to understand the budget better, I can see how the careful look, review by staff and careful budgeting to anticipate more realistic expenses over time, or even in a given year, would contribute to having built or not build that fund again over time. So in other words, back in 2018, there were, oh gosh, maybe $8-9 million of general fund available for projects, and it became tempting to the council then to think of all the different kinds of projects that could be had. And here we are. Some of them are still on a list. But we won't have that kind of discretion anymore, at least for the next year. Question then is, how do we start building that general fund discretionary money, if you will? As time moves on, there may be some projects we haven't thought about. And I realize that we're thinking about a year's time tonight. We're also going to be faced with that 10-year forecast. And maybe it'll be a discussion or more thought about what we'll be doing in the next several years to increase revenues. But what I'm wondering about is how healthy it is to have less than $1 million there when we have known in past years that there are often budget amendments needed or budget modifications needed midway because for some unforeseen reason, expenses turn out to be greater than what we or staff anticipated.
So a couple of things, Councilmember Martinez Rubin. One is that, yes, we'll be looking at, going back to the question about the capital projects or additional activities or initiatives that the council may direct staff to incorporate. We'll be looking at various funding mechanisms for those, especially for capital improvement projects as part of the long-term financial plan, right? So we're doing some strategic financial planning, working with a consultant to build that out in a long-term financial plan. So some of that can be addressed there. But in the interim, one thing to keep in mind is that we have the funds earmarked. As far as the $8.9 or $9 million that we have earmarked, and most of those are for the capital projects, just upfront saying, yes, we have these funds right now to cover the total cost of those projects. However, if the projects are not done in this fiscal year and we're back at the same point next year working on the budget and rebuilding the budget and rebuilding the capital improvement plans, we're reevaluating again. We don't anticipate $9 million of unassigned fund balance being used in the current budget year. We just want to make sure that those projects that are in the capital improvement plan, that the funding is earmarked, and we have those right now today. But we can reshuffle the deck. And as we go through these processes, again, like I said, next year for capital projects that are not completed or readjusting the capital improvement plan, that's going to change how that fund balance number looks, or is going to change the projected use of fund balance at that time as well. So those funds are not locked in to anything else. So if there are things that come up throughout the year, the council can take a look at what's available and make some adjustments there.
And if I may, Councilmember Martinez Rubin, I want to share something, and Director Guillory can expand on it if you'd like, but based on some feedback that we got from the council and trying to continually implement public finance best practices, the revised proposed budget has a different accounting treatment of our capital projects, and that explains a large portion of the decrease in the available fund balance. So whereas in the past, the city's budgeting practice had been to only reflect as use of fund balance the first year of the cost of a multi-year capital project, in this revised proposed budget, we are encumbering the full cost of a multi-year capital project all in this first year. So that $4 million or so available general fund balance you're used to seeing has been diminished to just a little under $1 million because of a change in the accounting treatment of the budget. So that we, everybody understands that when the city council has made a commitment to move forward with the capital project, if it's a general fund supported capital project, all of that funding has been set aside. So this reduction is a relatively recent change that we've implemented. And I think we can expound on that and explain it a little further in the staff report for the final proposed budget. But it's not really that the use of fund balance has increased dramatically in this budget. It's that we lock away essentially in a lockbox all of the funding that's needed to complete a multi-year capital project instead of just paying for it 1 year at a time. So I do think that's in a little bit that in some sense that change in the available general fund balance is not a real change. It's just a reflection of a different accounting treatment. Nonetheless, I think your point is well taken, and Director Guillory's response, I think, is notable in that we are still setting aside funding for multi-year projects that might not end up playing out, but both operational efforts and capital projects that might not end up playing out the way they're scheduled. And so those resources are still available for the council to redeploy if it wants to. Of course, as Director Guillory has mentioned, the council has already taken the very prudent and I think safe step of establishing a really, really robust general reserve. And as we've discussed before, that's our major hedge and our source of protection against either significant unforeseen expenditures and decrease in revenue. And I think there's in public finance, you're always trying to strike a balance. If you're accumulating large reserves, it kind of begs the question, well, aren't there public benefits and services that we could be providing with these? And so in the same way that you don't want to have too many savings sitting on the sideline, you also don't want to have, you don't want to have too few, you don't want to have too many, as long as there are services that you think would benefit the community. So we're trying to strike that balance.
All right, thank you both for your explanation of what it means to have a certain level of unassigned fund balance. It is not the indicator of a healthy municipal budget. I think that's the one key takeaway here. And also behind that statement or underlying that statement is that we are as a team, if you will, your dedicated staff time as well as our review of the budget and public input to some degree allows all of us to review overall where the city is so that we do not have the news a year early about how close we might be to experience what other cities have faced in the past, which is what we want to avoid. We don't want to get to the point of having such a budget that we're going to not be able to pay our bills, basically. So thank you. And also I want to express that, again, it's in the 3 years time, how much more refined and cleaner, if you will, much more understandable the process for developing the budget has been. Probably what I'm saying is just an indication of being immersed in it at least 3 times now. And but it's not only that, it's not only the exposure, it's how you staff have allowed us to learn how the budget works, and also improving upon some of the different things that we did back in 2018, 2019. And I'm chuckling because it was the year that when I was mayor and we had the 1 o'clock meeting and we're still trying to make decisions on the last Tuesday in June of that year to try to adopt the budget. And I think here at least I have felt a little bit more relaxed about what we're reviewing. And you have provided the modifications or the revisions to the budget gradually and allowed us as council members ample time to understand it. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Martinez Rubin. We'll go to Counselor Sasai for questions.
None for me, but thank you for your presentation.
All right. Thank you so much, Council. We'll open it back up to public comment. Are there any comments on this item?
Yes, Rafael Menes.
Good evening again, Council. My name is Rafael Menes, resident of Pinole, and I suspect that many of my questions tonight will be directed to submit to staff more directly. But I have a few comments here. So let's see. On page number 528 of 829, there's a failed line break. It's got Cameron Sasai Swearingen as a council member. That should probably be corrected just as a technical addenda. On let's see, page 566, I have a question about the deficit balance in the gas tax fund, Fund 200. I'm curious as to how there can be a deficit balance in a restricted fund. On page 567, I'm curious as to whether the day camp's expenditures were really 10 times its revenues in the final year of its operation. On page number 587, I'd note that having the columns for FY 22-23 revised budget next to FY 23-24 proposed budget makes it easier to read that chart compared to many of the other graphs, many of the other charts in the budget document, which have the FY 22-23 revised budget as sort of the first column out of several, and then the FY 23-24 proposed column as the last column, making it more difficult to compare across columns for any particular item. Just as sort of a process feedback. With regards to a few different ones, page number 607. First off, I'm curious as to what Fund 4710X is. It shows up at a few different places, and I'm not quite clear as to what that fund is exactly. With regards to, I also had some more specific questions. And some of them I'm just going to end up sending along to the finance director due to the limitations of time. But on page number 650 for the major non-personnel expense details for department budgets, public works, I was curious as to just what the office expenses were. That was Fund 42201. And I'm not quite sure what Fund 42514 special department expense is in particular compared to office expense, but it seems odd having a special fund for special expenses without any detail as to what those expenses are. And that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on this item?
No, there are no more public comments.
Okay. And Director Guillory, I know some of those maybe you want to circle back to at a different time. Did you have any other final thoughts before we go back to council? Okay.
I'm sorry, I will get back to Mr. Menes with responses to all of those.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Menes, for your comments. We'll go back to council for any other questions, comments, or motion. Mayor Pro Tem Toms?
I'm ready to move, give direction to staff to bring this back to us as a final. If there's a second.
Okay. Was there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right, great. Any questions on the motion? All right, City Clerk Bell, we'll go to, please call the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Councilmember Tate,
Yes.
Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. And thank you again, Director Guillory. Great work, city staff. All right, that brings us to item 11B, which is our revised proposed fiscal year 2023 through 2024 through 2027, 2028 5-year capital improvement plan. This evening, I think we have virtually Director, I was going to say Carr, but I have to now say, is it Dylan?
That's correct, Dylan.
Wonderful, Director Dylan. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city staff, and the Pinole community. Tonight, we'll be discussing our revised proposed CIP. Next slide, please. So our CIP for fiscal year 23-24 through 27-28 is our 5-year plan, which we use to identify and address the city's capital needs. Our capital projects are investments that either build, replace, or improve our city assets. The revised proposed 5-year CIP contains 32 capital projects and 9 infrastructure assessments. The 32 capital projects that are listed in the document are spread out across various categories, going from facilities, parks, sewer, stormwater, streets and roads, and then lastly, the infrastructure assessments. Next slide, please. So we want to talk about the schedule that's gotten up to this point today. We've had several meetings in which we presented to the Finance Subcommittee, Council, and recently we submitted the preliminary proposed CIP to the Planning Commission for their review, and they found all the projects to be in conformity with the general plan. And tonight we are here to solicit feedback from council and the community on the revised proposed CIP so that we may formulate the final version, which we hope to bring back to council on June 20th. Next slide, please. So here's a summary of all the funding sources in our budget. For the upcoming fiscal year, the total sources are required are about almost close to 13 million. And then our 5-year total is 59,168,223. And all the sources are listed there for each year. And then on the right-hand side is the 5-year total. Next slide, please. And that concludes our presentation. We'll take questions and answers and any other feedback you may have.
Thank you. And we'll go to council for questions. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
I have no questions.
All right, Councilor Tate,
No questions.
Councilor Sasai.
Yes, on page 781 of the agenda packet, it's under the project for safety improvements at Apping Way and Marlesta Road. On the description, on the very last sentence, it says, in October 2023, City Council awarded a construction contract to Grendel Incorporation. Are we going to award this in October 2023, or was this awarded back in 2022?
Sorry, that was a typo. Yes, it was awarded. We are currently waiting on materials and supplies. So this project is currently in the construction phase, and we hope to complete it before the calendar year.
All right, thank you. I'd just like to ask that we fix that typo in the final proposed CIP.
Yes, thank you.
All right, any other questions, Councilmember Sasai? Councilor?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Martinez Rubin.
Thank you. No questions.
All righty, we'll go back to council. Oh, excuse me, we'll go to public comments. Are there any public comments on this item?
Yes, Rafael Menes.
This item is for 11B, Mr. Menes.
It's again, Rafael, resident of Pinole, and I just had a brief comment on this one. Basically, I was slightly surprised on page 738, I believe, of 738 out of 829, to note that the matrix doesn't consider operational need. Is staff considering updating the matrix to include that? Or does it feel Or does staff feel that other elements of the matrix, functionally speaking, include operational need already? That's all for this item. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Does city staff have any additional comments on this item? Director Mishra?
Yeah, we actually discussed this particular criteria, the operational needs. For the next time round, when we actually evaluate projects, we will include that.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Any other final comments from staff? Otherwise, we'll go back to council for additional direction or a motion or question. Any council member would like to make a motion? Councilor Tate? Mayor Pro Tem Toms?
Okay, I'll move that we direct staff to bring this back with the corrections that were noted by Council Member Sasai and bring it back to us for in a final form.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? City Clerk Bell, please call the roll.
Thank you. Council members Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Pave,
Yes.
Sasai,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you again to our Public Works team for a great presentation. I think you all will still hold the crown now because we're going to 12A, which is our new business. 12A is the procurement process for successor solid waste and recyclables franchise agreement. Back to you all. And I think before you go, we'll have to have a transition out.
Right. So as we said earlier, I'm going to be abstaining from the conversation for the city attorney's advice, abundance of caution, being asked to not participate. So I'll be stepping out.
Okay. And we'll let you know when we get to 12B. That's okay. All right, Mrs. Dillon, back to you.
Great, thank you again. I have a presentation for this item. Wait for it to load here. I hope you're able to see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So we'll be discussing the procurement process for the successor solid waste and recyclables franchise agreement tonight. A little bit of background. On August 18th of 1986, the city entered into a franchise agreement with Richmond Sanitary Services, which is due to expire on June 30th of 2025. RSS, Richmond Sanitary Services, was later acquired by Republic Services. So throughout the staff report, you'll see reference to Republic Services. But the purpose of the franchise agreement was to provide Republic Services the exclusive right and privilege to collect and deliver for disposal, recycling, or processing of solid waste for our residential and commercial customers in Pinole. And now that the agreement is set to expire, the city needs to decide what course to take to arrange its next franchise agreement. In terms of what happens after the solid waste is collected, the final disposition of the collected waste and recyclables is also performed by Republic through a post-collection recycling and disposal agreement with Recycle More. And that agreement is set to also expire on June 30th of 2025. And the Recycle More board is also considering what course it will take to establish the successor post-collection agreement. So there are several options to consider. Some of the points for consideration have been discussed within the staff report, but the options include either an extension or a new franchise agreement with Republic, an option to have an initial negotiation with Republic, and if an agreement cannot be reached, then a competitive procurement. The third option is a competitive process for the city of Pinole exclusively. Another option is to do a competitive procurement process for Pinole and some other combination of our West County jurisdictions. And lastly, council can direct us to solicit the assistance of a consultant to advise the city on what procurement process to undertake. And that concludes the presentation. I'll just go back to this slide as we are opening this up for discussion.
All right. Thank you so much for your presentation. We'll go to council for questions. We'll start with, this time we'll start with our virtual council members. Council member Sasai.
None for me right now. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Martinez Rubin.
No questions, but I would like to make a statement as full disclosure. At the invitation of Community and Government Affairs Manager Gail Moore, I accepted an invitation to meet with her and General Manager Sean, the Public Services General Manager Sean Molberg, to hear their perspective on this agenda item coming up. I wanted to publicly make that statement.
Thank you. All right, Mayor Pro Tem Toms, any questions?
No, I'd like to also make the statement that I did meet with the general manager and with the government affairs manager for Republic Services to discuss this. And then I do have a question on the options to consider, where it talks about soliciting the assistance of a consultant to advise the city. Is this a consultant that's already on board with other jurisdictions, or would this be a separate procurement of a consultant?
So at this time, we don't have a consultant on board to assist with this process.
Okay, thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. And I also want to say I was honored to join as well the Republic Services team to learn a little bit more about their perspective on this issue. And also looking forward to hearing our public comments this evening on this item as well. So do we have any public comments on this item?
We do. Thank you. Two in person, Rafael Menez and Sean Moberg.
Good evening again, Rafael Menes, resident of Pinole, and I have a few comments on this item. First off, it seems to be as though taking part in a competitive procurement process with other jurisdictions would best enable the city of Pinole to, leverage our collective strengths rather than just negotiating city by city, and allow for more competitive bidding, because if we're just negotiating with Republic Services alone, it's possible that Republic Services bid would be different than it would be if Republic Services knew that we were also going through a competitive bidding process in combination with other cities. So I'd suggest the city consider adopting the fourth process on that list. And my second question was a little bit broader, or I guess it's the first question, really. The first bit was more of a comment. Would it be possible in whatsoever future franchise agreement is written for the city to include the cost of road damage caused by recycling trucks as part of the franchise agreement fees, given the fact that, recycling and garbage trucks are by far the heaviest vehicles traveling on many of our non-arterial streets, on the residential side streets in particular. And so they're going to be contributing a disproportionate amount to road damage, as the council has discussed in the past when it was discussing payment condition index items. I don't know whether that's a feasible request for the city to make, so that's why I'm bringing it up as a potential question to be asked in this negotiating process. And that's all my comments and questions for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on this item?
Yes, Mr. Moberg.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to just, for a moment, just express my gratitude and being able to provide the city of Pinole services for the last 25 years since I've been the general manager. Obviously, there's a long history behind our ability to provide the city the services. We've been providing it for over 100 years. A few items I just wanted to key on is the review and analysis that was performed by Public Works. The extension, the new franchise agreement with Public. I believe that is the best option for the city for us to sit and meet and discuss and negotiate an extension. It does need to happen at a very quick time in order to give you plenty of time to decide. If we cannot negotiate, you could opt out and still go to an RFP. So that is another option for you. There is a note here that there is no guarantee the city will achieve a better agreement through the competitive selection process. Take that into note. It is a long discussed process, and it can yield higher rates and higher costs through the competitive bid. So keep that in mind. And I think the negotiations could yield a better outcome from my perspective if I could have the opportunity to meet with the city and move through that process. Lastly, very important, the city has not experienced any performance issues with Republic Richmond Sanitary Service. There has been a long-standing history of successful performance. I will note that over the 25 years, I have negotiated successfully 3 amendments. In 2013, we had a very robust amendment that we negotiated with the city. In fact, I negotiated all of them with all 5 cities within West County for adopting some of the new services that need to be implemented when we went into the post-collection agreement. So success is imminent. I think it's very important. And I think we both the city and Republic can achieve that in a very short period of time. I think it's important to note that we have success in that, and I could do it again. At the end of the day, there is a tremendous amount of information to take into account for. 1383 SB, that's a major impact. There are unfunded costs that we need to talk about. Those are important. We have a lot of experience, and many of the services that we've undertaken in the last 6-7 months are moving in a very good form. And I think it would be advantageous for the city to negotiate to see where we are, see what we can do to minimize the rate impact with 1383 for a number of years, whatever the term is that we think would be beneficial for the city and the residents and commercial. With that, I appreciate the opportunity. We are very grateful to be able to have an employment base of 225 employees providing services to West County, particularly to the city of Pinole. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on this item?
Yes. Vincent Salini.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Vincent Salimi. I'm owner in Pinole and former board member of Recycle More. Why change something that works? The Republic Services has been providing a good service at the competitive rate. I will strongly recommend an extension of the franchise agreement with Republic Services. My 9 top reasons are: number 1, under the current franchise agreement, no CEQA review is required. If the city moves toward a new RFP, CEQA review requirement would increase the cost provided to the service. Number 2, the state mandates such as SB 1383, AB 939 are already being implemented by Republic Services. Cost of implementing those mandates for a new holder would also increase the cost for Pinole. Number 3, their existing agreement already increase has been around 3% for the last 2 years, while inflation skyrocketed close to 8% per year. A new RFP will increase the cost of the service to catch up with inflation. Reason number 4, because of integrating a new market for a new company and having to hire close to 200 people and having 90 trucks servicing the area will increase the cost that will be going towards Pinole. 5 years ago, a single truck cost $250,000. Now the same truck costs $250,000. A 40% increase that will be going towards Pinole. Reason number 5, new routes would have to be implemented. Reason number 6 needs to find a new transfer stations, new composting facility, and recycling facility outside of the county. We already have them, all of them, with the Republic Services. Reason number 7, added gas transmission, increased traffic, and increased FET tax. Reason number 8, a new RFP will include a lot of risk. A new hauler, unknown routes, unknown quantity of material, a lot of unknown that will increase the cost of doing business. Reason number 9, a new RFP could increase the rate as much as 27%. I would strongly recommend the City Council to do an extension of the franchise agreement with Republic Services. Pinole will not be left alone. As Pinole finishes negotiation with Republic Services, other neighboring cities such as Hercules can enjoy the same benefits by implementing the Me Too clause. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great night.
Thank you so much. Are there any other comments on this item?
No, there are no more public comments.
Thank you. So we'll go back to council. Are there any other comments from council, motions, or questions for staff? Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
So I have some comments, and I would just note that my very first job in planning was working on the AB 939 program in Solano County when it was being rolled out. So I do have some knowledge about the investments that haulers have made to comply with these laws. And so for this reason, I would recommend that we work on negotiating an extension of the franchise agreement. And if there's not a quick resolution to that, then if there's enough time to go out for an RFP, but I don't think that would be necessary. But there's a couple of reasons. Our former mayor Salimi mentioned a number of them, and I would just reiterate that Republic Services has an investment in assets already in Pinole and in the region. Those assets include the carts that belong to them. So that would be a cost. The ratepayers would have to pick up that cost. There's the organics processing in North Richmond. So that's already an asset that our residents can take advantage of through this service. And I think also that there's local employees, including some of our own Pinole residents that work for Republic Services in customer service or haulers. And I think the biggest reason is that if a hauler, well, not only the cost of doing an RFP, but say that, I don't think we would get any more competitive proposals, but if we did, the cost of having a hauler, say out of Oakland, to drive diesel trucks from Oakland to Pinole and then up to Altamont to dispose of them, that's a lot of vehicle miles traveled and a lot of greenhouse gas emissions that we want to avoid. I think, it really makes sense to work with somebody who is already working locally and working well. So that's my proposal, or my motion would be that we work on an extension or a new franchise agreement with Republic. I think that would serve us well.
Great, I'll second that motion. Are there any questions about the motion or comments?
Comments?
Yes, Councilor Martinez Rubin.
Thank you. Additional to what Mayor Pro Tem Toms has stated and some of the comments that former Mayor Salimi made, I wanted to emphasize, we were talking about established business. Performance has been positive, but we're not aware, at least, that there have been any reasons not to continue being provided service. That I also take my position as a resident, thinking about future when I am no longer on the council and will continue to be a ratepayer. put myself in the shoes of the current ratepayers who foresee that for a long-term contract, the rates are probably going to be something that will increase, just generally speaking, because of the cost of living increases. At this point, looking very hurriedly at the agreement that was linked to our website and mentioned in the staff report, we can see that there are specific ways that the city of Pinole has in the past negotiated a contract that has benefited its ratepayers. Also concurrent with what our city ordinance allows. In the prior or previous council meetings some time ago, earlier this year, thinking about the possible revenue sources for Pinole, one tempting source of revenue is to consider the franchise fees that an example of that is something that our current hauler pays. And to even have a discussion about what that could be, what that could become, consistent with an interest in gradually increasing fees if they must be increased, is something that I believe could happen in negotiations with Republic Services that could possibly not happen when we would enter into some sort of request for proposals from haulers with whom we're not familiar as a city, have not had the experience with them, and probably are going to consider averages based on the makeup of different cities. And on that point, here's where we can emphasize the particular characteristics of Pinole, in that although we often compare services to like cities, the makeup of our commercial structures or need for commercial waste hauling relative to residential waste hauling is not the same as it is in Hercules or San Pablo or Richmond. And so on that alone, the makeup of our city, if the rates are part of the formula are to be calculated based on the tons of waste that's hauled away, then we have to think about how that affects Pinole. So I would support the consideration of extending the agreement that we have, updating it as it must be updated, and negotiating with public services for extension of its service agreement.
Great, thank you, Councilor Martinez-Rubin. Councilor Sasai?
Thank you. Like most other members of this council, I also did have the opportunity to meet with Bill Moore, who is the Community and Government Affairs Manager for Public Services. And after hearing their point of view, and also looking at the several options that city staff presented to us to consider, the second option reflected by Mayor Pro Tem Tom's motion seems to me to be the fairest, the most cost-effective option that we have. And I'll also echo Mayor Pro Tem Tom's comment regarding greenhouse gas emissions and the benefits of working with a vendor that is here locally in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that being said, are there any other comments or questions on the motion? All right, not seeing any, we'll go to our city clerk for the roll.
Council members Martinez-Rubin,
Can you restate the motion, please?
Motion was to work on an extension or new franchise agreement with Republic. And if there is not resolution, then consider going out for competitive procurement.
Thank you. My vote is yes.
thank you. Councilmember Tave, I'll note his abstention for the record. Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Are there any other motions on this item? All right, not seeing any. I thank our staff for the brilliant report, and thank you to all the public comments we had as well. So we'll continue on with item 12B. If a staff member can get council member, I think our Mayor Pro Tem already started the job. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Toms. Great. We are all back and we are now on item 12B, which is our senior center interior upgrades project. Director Mishra, good evening.
Good evening, council, City of Pinole residents. This is a very short item, and this is regarding senior center interior upgrades. I did not prepare a presentation for this item. Senior center staff, our actually Parks and Rec staff and council member Tave visited the senior center and listed out certain internal renovations and upgrades need for the senior center. One of our CIP project captures most of the interior renovations of the buildings and all. However, it did not include a bunch of kitchen renovations and equipment needs of that facility. And for the staff report, I'm requesting to add another $60,000 to the current senior center modernization project in the CIP, which has about $260,000 for 2 years for this 23-24 fiscal year and the next fiscal year for completion. And I'm asking for another 60,000 to add to the current budget of 260 to make it total $320,000 approval for adding the equipments and kitchen renovation items. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
We're full of short and succinct presentations this evening. Thank you, Director Mishra, for the presentation and the staff report. Council, are there any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Toms?
A question, we just heard about the budget with very limited unallocated funds. Are we already digging into that with this request?
Most likely, yes. And I believe we have about 71,000 left. I'll take 60,000 just encumbered.
Okay, and if this were to be approved, would that be reflected in the item that we heard 2 items ago?
It will be in the final proposed budget. It will be included. It is not included right now.
Okay, thank you.
Director Guillory, did you want to speak to that as well?
Mishra answered the question.
Solid, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Toms, do you have any other questions? Councilor Tave, do you have any questions?
So I guess the 60,000, what is that? What is that bias?
It will buy us most of the equipment upgrades and the kitchen upgrades that we requested during the bid. It's still an estimate.
So we haven't got quotes on any of the
No,
items. So
No.
this is just kind of a raw number or a rough order of magnitude number.
that's right.
Councilor Tave, are you good with questions? Okay, we'll go back to Mayor Pro Tem Toms. I think she has one more question.
Yeah, one more follow-up is that it looks like some of these projects or some of these improvements could be done under separate contracts. And it's over the next 4 fiscal years. It looks like it'd be in the CIP 23-24 through 27-28.
It will be over two fiscal years.
Okay. Okay, and so I think my overall question is this something that could be delayed till this time next year? Is it a separate enough $60,000 worth of improvements that could be delayed? If we didn't want to, drop down to just $11,000 of unallocated funds.
I believe it can be delayed if council directs us, yes. We'll be continuing the other internal updates and this could be the last item.
Okay, thank you.
If I may add, the 71,000 is the result of the baseline budget. So this is one time, so we would be adding to the use of fund balance if we added the 60,000. So it wouldn't impact the 71,000. Welcome.
Thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted to, that was a good point. The other council members virtually, any questions? Councilor Martinez Rubin.
Thank you. Director Mishra, what fund are we talking about to make up that difference between what was estimated and what would cover what was initially budgeted and what would cover the estimated additional expenses? It doesn't necessarily come from the general fund, unassigned general fund, does it?
A portion of it does. So there's a portion that's from the general fund, and then there's a portion from the development impact fee fund.
Thank you. Okay. And I raise this because again, it's related to having an appreciation for how the money that comes into the city through different means actually gets used. So I've stated my question. I'll save my comment for the comment part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Martinez Rubin. Councilor Desai, do you have any questions?
Not at the moment. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. We'll go to the city clerk for any public comments.
No public comments.
All right, now seeing no public comments, we'll go back to council for any questions, comments, or motions folks would like to make. Councilor Martinez Rubin, I'll start with you this time.
Thank you. So the comment I had in mind to make was that this is one of those instances where we have a facility that needs some attention, some care, and either we address it or earmark the funds available now to be used over time, because it's going to be taken care of over time anyway. And I say anyway because not all the work may not be completed in one fiscal year. So without these improvements, if you will, or modernization, or just making the facility better, it's either going to degrade or not be used as intended, both for the public, the seniors, and all who attend or participate in the activities, but as well as a revenue generator, which I think was the additional part of why we were even looking at modernization, because it's one of few facilities in the city that can actually yield some revenue. But in the state that it is right now, it is not attractive to do so. And now I'm going to think about a question that I have. If the center as is even being open now for use by public, where in the past it was reserved for parties and all kinds of things outside of city use. Is it being used that way now? And if it is, goodness, are people still paying the amounts that were being charged for the use of the facilities, even in the state that it is?
So I'm happy
And
to
that's a question to staff. Sorry, I kind of jumped from comment to question, but it occurred to me to ask. Thank you.
Sure, happy to answer that question. So we had closed it down to private rentals as part of COVID, and only recently reopened it. The reopening event was the Rotary's crab feed fundraiser, but we haven't rented it since at the normal rate we had been previously. That's due to staffing issues. One of the, if I recall correctly, one of the motivations behind this research into whether we could do upgrades was to make it a more appealing and usable facility, both for the regular users and for renters. That said, prior to the pandemic, the facility was rented virtually every weekend day, but I think there's some hope that we'll be able to increase the rental rates to something that's still fair and competitive. Of course, we don't get to decide that. We have to see what people are willing to pay based on what other facilities are available in their rates. But I do think that the city will recoup some of the cost of this investment, if not all of the cost of this investment, particularly the upgrade. Some of the structural stuff just needs to be done to be good stewards of this public building. But the finish work that I think is going to make the user experience nicer, I think will recuperate, even though that wasn't the premise under which we were going to be pursuing these improvements. I do think they'll pay for, a portion of themselves, if not all of themselves.
Thank you for that. I know the center draws people from more than just Pinole. And at one time, probably in its glory days, maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was beautiful. It was attractive. Now we enter, and it's a shame that it's in such need for repair and upgrades. And as is, it is not as attractive to outside parties for what the fees are. So we can do something to help, not just make it attractive and safer and modernize it for its intended use for services to the membership and as well as to residents of Pinole and beyond. I think that would be it's going to be helpful to us. Remains to be seen when we would recoup the total amount, certainly, but I'm seeing it as something that needs to be done. It's either going to be done now, it's going to be done later. And as we have experience with another facility or other facilities here in town, the more we delay, the increased costs for different reasons that we end up experiencing, whether it's labor shortages or shortages in materials, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Martinez Rubin. Are there any other comments or motions folks would like to make?
I'll make a motion that we provide direction to staff to amend the contract to add $60,000 of funding for the improvements of the senior center. And I would just request that we are cognizant of the time that the community really uses the center, like at the holidays, Rotary Club, crab feed. We're going to be hosting the mayor's conference next May. So the sooner the better. And then of course, with the senior center programs, it's not clear to me what, when their busiest times, but if we can see if we can coordinate around some of the heavy usage of the senior center.
I'll second.
Great. Thank you. There's a motion, a second. I just do want to add a one comment that the two upcoming plans that we've moved around the facilities and real estate plan. I don't know if we have a date certain on when that plan is going to be finalized, but that is something that I know our city staff is moving forward, as well as the energy audit around storage and conservation. Since those are not plans that we currently have, I know that there will be findings or recommendations from those. I ask that staff just be agile to thinking about the internal interior upgrades that can come from those two plans as well. So if that means this comes back to us at a future meeting, let us know. But I just wanted to be cognizant that, I think the senior center modernization project is a critical one. It's one of the most utilized facilities in the city of Pinole, and it's something that many of our residents talk about going to and wanting more from the actual real estate of it. So again, thank you for this presentation. I also am interested in how these two plans will formulate a greater development, perhaps around energy conservation and other interior upgrades too.
Thank you. We'll keep a note of that. We actually advertised the energy generation and storage today, and we expect that RFP to be closed on July 14th, and we'll be working with that same.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the motion?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to clarify the motion. I did hear amend the contract. Are we amending one contract or are we
Just
amending
amending the budget.
Yeah,
Thank you
budget.
for that clarification?
All right, seeing no questions or comments, we'll go to City Clerk Bill to call the roll on the motion.
Thank you. Council members Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Councilmember Taves.
Yes.
Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you, staff, again for your presentation. Looking forward to next steps here. That brings us to item number 13. And yes, it is 8:21. Next, we have our second citizens to be heard forum for anyone who didn't speak during the first one. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Yes, Cordell Henry.
Yes, so can you hear me, Roxanne?
Yes, go ahead.
So good evening, Mayor Murphy, Council. I am Cordell Handler and I'm a Richmond resident. So three things that have occurred to me this evening. So for one thing, start the meeting earlier because I think 5 o'clock sounds reasonable because that way we can get through the whole agenda in a timely manner. So I'll give you credit for that. Number two is when the council adopted the budget earlier, two things kind of I had a concern with. So I sent an email out this afternoon to Finance Director Guillory. Hopefully I get a response. When I saw the amounts to replace for the city clerk and city council, I was waiting to hear back from her to find out what does this mean, what does this entail? So second, kind of related to that, because when I saw the amount for $30,000 to have a vendor like to do event planning, it suddenly occurred to me. I said, I have looked into other, I looked into an event planner that's based out of San Francisco, and this vendor does parties, you know, like Christmas and all that type of thing. So that's who I would recommend. So her name is send an email out to the city clerk so that way I can forward it to her. And then the third final item is because every time I listen to the meetings, it's like I find them very interesting because in the case for Mr. Anthony, every time he calls in, he makes very good points, but I feel that he has been like once again being cut off because he never gets to finish his comments. Because I have looked at other cities in West County and the mayors do allow for the person to finish their comments. So I'm asking that when you hear from your constituents because they're the ones who have voted for you, and this is how you repay them by cutting them off. Everyone has a right to free speech, even me, because I am trying to teach my nephew how to like stand up for himself. 15, that's an age that he needs to express himself. So I'm hoping that at some point that you will listen to your constituents, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
No, there are no more public comments.
All right, we'll close out the second comments for excuse me. We'll close out the second citizens to be heard forum, and we will now go to item 14, and that is
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
can I just make one comment with the adjournment?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't talk to you earlier.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, thank you. As we adjourn in memory of Amber Schwartz, this last Saturday marked the 35th year that she went missing from our neighborhood. So, you know, it's always useful. It's always important to keep her name out there like we do every time we adjourn. But, you know, we had a significant tragedy in our community 35 years ago this past weekend. Thank you for allowing me to say that.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Thomas. And we are now ready to adjourn. So I adjourn the meeting to the regular meeting of June 20th in remembrance of Amber Schwartz. Good evening, everyone.